Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here at the Senate. On behalf of the Senate panel, this organizational meeting and hearing of the Joint Congressional Energy Commission is hereby called to order.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the House panel, this organizational meeting and hearing of the Joint Congressional Energy Commission is called to order. Before we start with our joint meeting, let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, we praise you for you are our Father and Savior. We thank you for bringing us together to this meeting. Lord, be with us now as we meet to strengthen us, to keep us, to protect us, and to direct us. Grant everyone in this meeting your blessing as we work with pride and patriotism to the aims and the purposes of this committee for the country. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our meeting so that our discussion may reach a successful conclusion. Guide us on the path to unity and harmony. May the outcome that we make not be for our own good, but for the welfare of our country. Thank you, Lord. In the name of Jesus Christ and in the guidance of the Holy Spirit, we pray. Amen.
The JCEC is a congressional commission constituted under Section 62 of the Republic Act number 9136, or the IPIRA, composed of 14 members, with the chairman of the Committee on Energy of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and 6 additional members from each chamber, designated by the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, respectively. For the record, let me state name of the 6 members of the JCEC. From the Senate, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa, Senator Manuel Lito Lapid, Senator Francis Cheese Escudero, Senator Edgardo Angara Jr., and Senator Risa Ontiveros.
For the House panel, the 6 additional members are Representative Rodante D. Marcoleta, Representative Arnulf B. Fentebella, Representative David J.J.C. Suarez, Representative Albert S. Garcia, Representative Mark O. Coanco, and Representative Joseph Stephen S. Paduano.
Thank you, Co-Chair Congressman Velasco, and with 3 present members, Congressman Marcoleta and Congressman Coanco. Thank you. First on the agenda is JCEC's organizational meeting and the adoption of rules of procedure. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the rules and procedures. But before it is seconded, I just want to ask, is there a method to amend such rules at any time, Mr. Chairman? If any member would want to add or some rules or provisions, can it be done at any time, Mr. Chairman?
Precisely, Mr. Congressman Coanco, this is the forum where we have to make amendments if necessary.
Okay, that being the case, I move that we adopt the rules as stated here.
But before that, Honorable Coanco, I would like to first, on top of your motion, I move also that the rules that the previous rules of the JCEC be adopted, but with changes reflecting the following. First, the expanded jurisdiction of the JCEC for Republic Act number 9513, otherwise known as the Renewable Energy Act of 2008. Republic Act number 11039, otherwise known as the Electric Cooperatives Emergency and Resiliency Fund Act. Republic Act number 11234, otherwise known as the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop. Republic Act number 11285, otherwise known as the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. Republic Act number 11361, otherwise known as the Anti-Obstruction of Power Lines Act. Republic Act number 11371, otherwise known as the Murang Kuryente Act. Republic Act number 11592, otherwise known as the LPG Industry Regulation Act. Republic Act number 11646, otherwise known as the Microgrid Systems Act. And Republic Act number 11697, otherwise known as the Electric Vehicle Industry Act. And second, the revised rules on quorum. which was approved by the JCPC in the 17th Congress through JCPC Resolution number 2017-01 to read as follows. For Section 12, quorum for a meeting of the Energy Commission, at least 2 members, striking out at least 4 members of the Commission with both Senate and House panels represented shall constitute a quorum to hold the meeting. And an amendment to Section 18, quorum for hearings, at least, striking out 4, at least 2 of the members of the Commission with both Senate and House panels represented shall constitute a quorum to conduct a hearing.
Any objection?
With that motion, Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my motion and I second your motion.
Okay. No objection. There being no objection, the motion is carried. Let us now move on to the hearing proper. Next in our agenda is the country's power situation and power outlook for 2023. I firmly believe that it is our responsibility to scrutinize the current state of our power sector, identify the challenges we face, and seize the opportunities that lie before us. Through comprehensive analysis and informed discussions, we can pave the way for a sustainable, affordable, and reliable power supply that empowers our industries, supports our communities, and enhances the quality of life for Filipinos. Our examination of the power sector must go beyond surface-level discussions. We need to delve into the factors that influence power generation, distribution, and consumption. By understanding the intricate dynamics at play, we can identify areas that require improvement and explore innovative solutions. It is our duty to ensure that our power system can meet the increasing demands of our growing population and dynamic economy. Alamin po natin kung may sapat ba tayong kuryente sa mga darating na buwan at kung anong maaaring nating gawin para siguraduhin hindi tayo makararanas ng sunod-sunod na rotational brownouts or even blackouts. We want to have an adequate supply of electricity, and that is why we are welcoming other sources like liquefied natural gas or LNG and waste-to-energy or WTE. We will also be looking into the status of integration of renewable sources of energy. Kasabay na rin po nito, baka pwedeng tingnan na rin natin ang presyo ng ating kuryente. Tingnan natin ang implementasyon ng Lifeline Rate Program. Unang-una, alam po ba ito ng karamihan? Napapakinabangan po ba nila ito? In our pursuit of an efficient and seamless power system, hindi po natin pwedeng kalimutan ang National Grid Corporation of the Philippines o NGCP. As we all know, the NGCP shoulders the immense responsibility of managing our national power transmission lines, facilitating the smooth transfer of electricity across vast distances and connecting power generators to distribution utilities. Silang may hawak ng backbone ng kuryente ng buong bansa. In a way, sa kanila nakasalalay ang kuryente natin for the most part. Today, we commit ourselves to closely scrutinizing the NGCP's performance, its adherence to regulations, and its plans for the future. To this scrutiny, we aim to enhance accountability within the NGCP and the power sector as a whole. We will leave no stone unturned in our pursuit of robust, secure, and well-maintained transmission infrastructure that can support our nation's energy needs. We will make sure that the ERC will impose the proper penalty in case there are lapses in the NGCP's performance. Our examination will not stop at identifying issues. We need to find solutions, long-term solutions. In this connection, we must keep ourselves open to reforms and drastic changes in the current energy landscape. Sa laki ng kinakaharap po nating problema, malaking mga pagbabago rin ang kailangan nating gawin. Matulungan po tayo. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. I welcome everyone to this first meeting of the Joint Congressional Energy Commission, or the JCEC. I thank our counterpart in the Senate, especially Senator Raffy Tulfo, for holding this meeting. Before we begin, I would like to officially introduce and acknowledge the presence of my esteemed colleagues from the House panel. We have Representatives Rodante D. Marcoleta, Representative Mark O. Coanco, and Representative Albert S. Garcia. Good afternoon also to the members of the Senate panel. Looking at our agenda, today's meeting will not only serve as our organizational meeting in adoption of our rules of procedure, but also you will be given updates on the power situation and power outlook in the country. We likewise hope to be updated on concerns in the transmission sector, including the operation and management of the national power transmission lines by the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. We are well aware that the concerns of the energy sector in the country, among which is the persistent problems of high energy prices, including oil and electricity, plus issues on the supply of electricity, necessitate the review and possible amendments to certain energy laws, specifically the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001, or the EPIRA. Considering that the primary function of the JCEC is to review and evaluate the performance of industry participants in relation to the objectives and timelines of the EPIRA, I hope that in the performance of our functions in the JCEC, we will be able to identify the problems and come up with recommendations or appropriate remedial legislative or administrative measures to facilitate and hasten the proceedings in both chambers in amending the said law. May I inform our colleagues in the Senate that the House Committee on Energy will already start the ball rolling by conducting or will conduct its initial deliberation on the various measures on EPIRA amendments very soon. With the expanded task oversight functions of this joint committee provided under Republic Act number 11571, or the JCEC Enhancement Act, which we passed during the 18th Congress, I believe we to enable us to perform effectively and deliver what is expected from this joint committee. I look forward to our collaborative partnership to work towards the common purpose of enhancing the energy sector for the good of our country. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Co-Chair Congressman Velasco. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Congressman Albert Garcia. Good afternoon, sir. And now, may we hear if any opening statement from the Honorable Congressman present here. Congressman Marcoleta, do you have any opening statement? Congressman Coanco?
Mr. Chairman, how many minutes do I have?
Oh, as long as you want.
Okay. Okay, because we had a very long discussion last night at the budget hearing for energy in the Committee of Appropriations in the House, which lasted past 12 o'clock midnight last night. And it was very difficult to communicate my message because we were only given 3 minutes at a time, and the thought was always interrupted. The good co-chair, Senator Tulfo, mentioned about LNG and renewable energy. Mr. Chairman, mas mahal pa po ang LNG kaysa ang coal. Kagabi po, tinanong ko po sa ating DOE Secretary dahil meron pong malaking stockholder ng isang generating company na nagsabi sa akin, hindi po ako eksperto kaya tinatanong ko sa DOE. Ang sabi niya, sa $8.50 per million BTU ng LNG, dito pa lang po ito pumapantay sa presyo ng coal-fired power natin ngayon. Doon pa lang nag-uumpisa maging competitive ang LNG. Kagabi po, ang testimony ng USEC ni DOE, sir, what was his name? Yeah. Nasa $13 to $15 po per million BTU. Yun ang mababang presyo sa ngayon? Ang sabi po sa akin ng outside information, and I hope DOE can comment on this, nasa between $20 to $60 po ang LNG. Ang China po ay pinakyaw na ang supply ng LNG sa mundo o sa mga Arabo po, like Qatar and UAE, around 30% of their total production for the next 30 years. Ang kaagaw po natin sa LNG sa mundo, ang Japan, ang South Korea, ang Taiwan, ang China, ang mayayaman na bansa ng Europa. Ang question ko po sa DOE, you don't have to answer. I'm making a statement. Bakit po tayo aasa dito sa fuel na imported na mas mahal pa sa coal na wala tayong kasiguraduhan sa ating supply? Binanggit mo rin, Mr. Chairman, yung renewable energy. Kahapon tinanong ko rin po yan at ang sagot po sa akin ng DOE, ang renewable energy sa Pilipinas ngayon ay 22% ng kabuuan ng energy natin. Ngunit sabi ko po sa kanila, kulang ang impormasyon kasi ang pinag-uusapan, lalong-lalo na nung binanggit ng ating Presidente Bongbong Marcos, ang renewable energy, ang alam kong intindi ng taong bayan ay ang wind and solar. Ngayon, kung wind and solar ang ating pinag-uusapan, Mr. Chairman, 3% lang sa ngayon. Ilan po ang target ng DOE sa wind and solar by 2040? Tinanong ko rin po yan. Ang sagot po nila, 94 gigawatts. 94 gigawatts po ang kabuuan ng buong kuryente ng Pilipinas sa ngayon is 22 gigawatts lang. And 94 gigawatts ang kanilang target for wind and solar by 2040. Para pong mirakulo ang gusto nating mangyari. Hindi rin po nila nasagot ang externalities in cost ng mga intermittent sources na ito na wind and solar. Example po ang isang tahimik na gabi na ang lahat ng itinayo natin wind and solar ay magbibigay ng 0 megawatts. Ang sagot po nila, baterya. Mr. Chairman, ang baterya, meron pong malaking baterya.
Mr. Congressman Cuangco, I can understand the issues and concerns that you're raising right now, and I can understand where you're coming from. Maybe certain issues that you want to tackle, we can probably tackle that in the next hearing, where you can comprehensively discuss all matters that you want to be heard. But right now, I need also to hear the statement of the other congressman present here. But anyway, I'll give you another minute, sir.
Yeah, huling punto po, itong baterya, no. Ihambing po natin sa PNPP1 kung sakaling umandar. Ang kaya pong ilikha ng PNPP1 is 5 billion kilowatt hours a year. Yung Hornsdale Mega Battery ng South Australia na binenta ng Tesla, 129,000 kilowatt hours po yun, $90 million. Kayo na po ang gumawa ng mathematics, tignan nyo, makikita nyo na multiples mas mahal ang baterya kaysa paanda rin itong PNPP1 at itong baterya po ay hindi lumilikha ng kuryente. In fact, kumukonsumo ng around 20% dahil 80% lang po ang round trip efficiency niya. Kaya, Mr. Chairman, sana po itong committee, itong commission, clarify the sources, the choices for our people to decide intelligently. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman Cuanco, and I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Congressman Arnie Fuentabella. And now let's move on. Is there anybody here present would like to make an opening statement? Maybe Congressman Albert Garcia? Do you have any opening statement, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, Mr. Chair, I'd like to reserve my statement till after the presentation.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Kong. And how about Congressman Arnie Fuentabella? Do you have an opening statement, sir?
With the interest of time, same with Albert Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Fuentabella. Now, before we proceed with the hearing, may I request Committee Secretary Attorney Grace from the NRCOM of the Senate panel to acknowledge the resource persons in today's hearing. Committee Secretary.
Good afternoon, honorable chairpersons and members of the Joint Congressional Energy Commission. Joining us for today's public hearing and organizational meeting are as follows. From the Department of Energy, we have Secretary Rafael P.M. Lutilla, ASEC Mario Marasigan, and ASEC Ronald Contilia. Also, Mr. Angelo Africa. From the Energy Regulatory Commission, we have Attorney Mona Lisa de Malanta, the chairperson, Engineer Alvin Jones Ortega, Engineer Ligayo Galang, Attorney Alexandra Josine Gamboa, Attorney Rachel Tan, and Mr. Vladimir Mancinido. From the National Electrification Administration, we have Mr. Antonio Mariano Almeda, the administrator, with Ms. Laila Bonifacio, Ms. Ana Clarice Reyes, Mr. John Carlos Santos, and Ms. Claudette Ubaldo Dema. From the National Transmission Corporation, we have Ms. Dina Dison, Ms. Susana Singson, Ms. Shalimar Gaslani, Mr. Jomel Cristobal, Attorney Noel De Leon, Engineer Wilfredo Dasal, and Ms. Rogeline Ronquillo. From the National Power Corporation, we have Ms. Bernadette Rivero and Mr. Maximo de los Reyes. From the Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corporation, PISAM, we have Mr. Frederick Tamayo, the Corporate Legal Counsel, with Mr. Ray Evince Valencia, Ms. Emelina Blanco, and Ms. Ella Foliado. From the Philippine Electricity Market Corporation, we have Mr. Fortunato Laines, the Chief Governance Officer, with Mr. Mark Antonio Andrada, Mr. Aljon Kenneth Yap, Mr. Marcelo Himalan. From the Independent Electricity Market Operator of the Philippines, IMOP, we have Attorney Richard Nethercott, the President and CEO, with Mr. Arjon Valencia, Mr. Joshelle Cliffany Santos, and Mr. Lilibeth Grace Vetus Magtalas. From the Philippine Competition Commission, we have Attorney Erica Acampado with Mr. Jacob Flores. From the Manila Electric Company, Meralco, we have Attorney Jose Ronald Valles, the First Vice President and Head of Regulatory Management, with Mr. Larry Fernandez, Mr. Roderick Denison Naku, Mr. Sante Ruela, Attorney Carmen Grace Ramos, Mr. Ryan Morales, Ms. Maria Leticia Sapina, and Mr. Mark Delumen. From the Philippine Rural Electric Operatives Association, PhilReca, we have Attorney Janine Colingan. From the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, we have Mr. Anthony Almeda, Ms. Attorney Cynthia Perez Alabanza, Attorney Ronald Dylan Concepcion, Attorney Mark Anthony Actub, Ms. Maria Bernadette Gan, Ms. Patricia Ann Roque, Mr. Eufemio Belura, and Mr. Clark Agustin. From the Philippine Independent Producers Association, Power Producers Association, PIPA, we have Attorney Anne Storcom and Tulibano. From the Developers of Renewable Energy for Advancement, DREAM, we have Attorney Jose Layub. From the Retail Electricity Suppliers Association, we have Mr. Raymond Ruasius. And from the Management Association of the Philippines, we have Mr. Ruth Yu Owen. Everyone has been acknowledged, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Committee Secretary Grace. We will now give the invited resource persons the opportunity to discuss their presentations on the power situation and power outlook. To maintain the seamless and orderly conduct of today's meeting, each presenter will be allotted 5 minutes for their presentation. If a member of this joint congressional committee wishes to ask clarifying questions or make a manifestation, they'll be allotted a maximum of 10 minutes to do so, and will only be heard after all presentations have been made. Let's start with the presentation of the Department of Energy. Then we will hear from the Energy Regulatory Commission, particularly regarding its audit on the performance of NGCP with respect to its operation and management. So, Secretary Lutilla, you're being recognized. The floor is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, the co-chair and honorable members of the Joint Congressional Energy Commission. In the interest of time, I will request Assistant Secretary Mario Marasigan to concentrate on what the commission has requested, which is on the power outlook.
Thank you, Secretary Lutilla. And now, Asek Marasigan, you're being recognized.
Yes, and this power outlook is really concentrated on the main grid. The off-grid is something that we can discuss separately. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Congressman.
may I know
Marcoleta.
from the presenters if I'm not sure, I don't know the extent of your presentation, but if it is necessary, we would like to request that the presentation be premised on the declared policies of EPIRA, because this is something that we should achieve. I am more particularly concerned about, for example, the objectives such as transparent and reasonable prices of electricity in a regime of free and fair competition and public full accountability. Quality, reliability, security, and affordability of the supply of electric power, and to protect the public interest as it is affected by the rates and services of electric utilities. Ito po kasi ang pinaka-importante. We would like to see the power situation and outlook geared towards achieving these declared policies. 21 or 22 years ago, we have enacted this EPIRA. Ang sabi po natin, reasonable rates, competitive rates of electricity, secure and reliable, ibig sabihin, walang brownout. Kasi kapag may brownout, hindi secure, hindi reliable, hindi quality. Pag mataas naman, Mr. Chair, hindi affordable. And so, until and unless we achieve the twin objectives of supplying reliable, quality electricity at affordable and reasonable rates, kahit ano pong power situation and outlook that you will present to us will be meaningless. Sana po yung presentation is geared towards achieving those objectives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I'm sure they will tackle the issues that you raised, Congressman Marcoleta. And now let's go ahead with Asek Marasigan, who was designated by Secretary Lutilla on his behalf to make the presentation. Go ahead, Asek Marasigan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, honorable chairs and members of the JCEC. Can we please proceed to slide number 3? So for the current power situation, slide number 3, please. We would like to indicate that our forecasted peak is not yet met, and the highest peak that we have encountered for the year happened on July 6, 2023. We at a level of 10,550 megawatts. Our projected peak would happen sometime the same period, but it should be up to 13,125. So we had a buffer of about 575 megawatts for Luzon. For Visayas, our projected peak demand is at 2,691. We have reached the highest so far for the year at a level of 2,458 megawatts on May 17, 2023, leaving us some buffer of 233 megawatts. And for Mindanao, of course, we have ample and sufficient supply in Mindanao, but we also see some deficiencies in terms of the full capacity of its facilities. However, the peak demands that we have projected is not yet met, and we have a difference of about 80 megawatts. As far as today, our available capacity is almost at 14,000 megawatts, and our peak demand, our projected peak demand for the day is at 11,993. So we have ample available reserve capacity of almost 2,000 megawatts. For the Visayas, we have about 316 megawatts of reserve, with the projected available capacity of 2,554 and peak demand at 2,238. While in Mindanao, we have more than enough capacity at 3,368 megawatts, with a peak demand projection of about 2,200 megawatts, leaving us more than 1,000 megawatts of ample reserves. Now, please allow me to proceed directly to slide number 6.
You have to distinguish between installed and dependable capacity.
This is already our projected available capacity, so it's beyond the dependable capacity.
Ang sinasabi natin,
Hindi po.
installed capacity.
As far as po dun sa ating mga outlook, ang dinidetermine na po natin is the available capacity. So, kung na-reach po ng available capacity, yung dependable capacity, hanggang doon na lang siya. Pero sometimes po yung available capacity of a certain plant may not even reach dependable capacity for several reasons. One reason is maybe they have the ratings, and sometimes yung actual dispatch po ng ating market. Aside from that, meron po tayong mga nakikitang constraints sa mga linya natin. So kung yung pong linya natin may constriction, definitely hindi rin po magkakaroon ng actual dispatch. Now, this graph shows po yung ano yung projection natin for the rest of the year. In consideration na rin po that we will be hosting the FIBA World Cup starting August 25, as well as the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan election October 30 in 2023. As you may see here, bali, ito na po ang pinoproject nito is the capacity beyond what is our demand. So, ang sinasabi lang po nitong ating projection, yung available capacity po natin, including the operation, the current resumption of operation of Ilihan, will provide ample supply and reserve to the Luzon grid. So, wala po tayong nakikita, especially if the dispatch of Ilihan power, as well as the online, the timely commissioning of the committed projects, naka-reflect na po dyan, wala po tayong any alerts for the rest of the year. Let me now proceed to but sinasabi po natin dito yung operation ng ating, marami pong conditions yun. Like for example, yung pong operation natin ng Ilihan, yung pong LNG facility natin is not yet at full operation. Nasa test and commissioning pa po yung supply. Hindi po yung actual na planta. Then nandyan pa rin po yung ating limitations sometimes. Yung pong ibang planta natin na recently committed, nasa testing and commissioning facilities pa rin. So, pero kasama na po rito yung projections natin na magkakaroon tayo ng outage. Ang ginagawa po natin dyan, yung 4-year running average po natin. Ano yung nangyari for the last 4 years? Ano yung mga outages? So, in-incorporate na po rin natin yan as projections. Kaya, kung hindi mangyayari yung outages na yun, magsiserve po yun as buffer.
May I request to my colleagues here, in the interest of time and time management, maybe we can ask questions later after the presentation of each resource persons here. Is that okay with everybody, co-chair and members here? Okay, and next to present is the ERC. And we have Andy Patapos.
Asik Marisigan will just quickly go over the Visayas.
Alright.
And now
Yeah. Can we now proceed po? So for 2024 and
How much
2025,
longer do you have?
po tayong
Sir,
wala po tayong projection na yan.
Tagal. Makaabuti niyo ng kalating
3 minutes
oras.
po.
3 minutes. Okay, go
Okay.
ahead, please.
So let me now proceed to slide 10. Yep. ito po yung scenario natin sa Visayas. So nakikita po natin na meron tayong potential yellow or red in the afternoon peak. No? But this will be easily resolved po by the transfer of electricity coming from Luzon and Mindanao using the existing natin yung Luzon-Visayas interconnection at saka yung pong ongoing na testing and commissioning po natin ng Mindanao-Visayas Interconnection Project. So ano man po yung deficiency natin, dahil meron na tayong transfer, ma-address po yon for the Visayas. Actually, yung next slide please. Ito po yung slide na nagpapakita na meron na pong transfer yung HVDC natin. So ano po yung gap doon sa unang graph na fill up po ng ating interconnection. Now we have also the evening peak. Next slide please. At yung evening peak po natin, again, kung Visayas alone will operate, mangyayari po may mga yellow alerts tayo. But the next slide will provide also, next slide please, na yung pong transfer of electricity from Luzon and Mindanao will amply provide kung ano po yung requirement ng Visayas grid natin. So ma-address po yung mga yellow and yellow alerts natin for Visayas. Now, please proceed to slide slide number 19, which is the Mindanao situation. So yung Mindanao situation po natin, alam po natin may excess capacity tayo sa Mindanao. So wala po tayong nakikita na any alerts in Mindanao. Ang pinaka-worst na po niyan, slide 22 please. Ito po yung asa natin yung demand at saka yung pong projections natin with transfer, wala pa rin po tayong nakikitang any alerts. So again, last slide po namin, yun pong isa sa mga major factors ng ating outlook ay yung pong availability ng lines. So dito po ipinakikita lang po natin yung ano yung mga major line projects na currently po is nag-start na ng operation or targeted po for the complete operation by the end of the year. Ang isa lang po namin nakikita rito na sana mapabilisan pa ay yung interconnection of our island grid system. With that po, maraming salamat po, honorable chairs and members of the JCEC. Thank you.
Thank you, ASEC Mario Marasigan. And now let's move on. Go to Attorney Mona Lisa de Malanta. It's now your turn to make a presentation. Attorney de Malanta, ma'am.
Good afternoon po. Magandang hapon po sa lahat ng miyembro ng JCEC. We prepared a couple of slides just to address the issues that were requested for us to be covered. But if there are questions on other issues, we can address them later on. Can you provide the slides, please? So we took off from the last Senate Committee on Energy hearing of July 12 to address the issues that were raised then. Lagay po ng slides. But the first update that we provide is with respect to the power supply situation in Occidental Mindoro. On the particular power supply agreement between OMECO and OMCPC Samarica, we would like to update this committee that the applicants, both OMECO and OMCPC, filed a joint motion to withdraw their power supply agreement, which was granted by the Commission on August 8, 2023. Now that that PSA has been withdrawn, OMECO and OMCPC Samarica can enter into an emergency power supply agreement so that the only one of the supposedly 3 component power plants that were supposed to supply under that PSA can be contracted under emergency basis. On the second update, it was discussed during the last Senate Committee on Energy hearing. There was a discussion on the franchise tax of NGCP. Also last August 8, 2023, the ERC passed a resolution suspending NGCP's passing on of its franchise tax to consumers. On the next item, there was a discussion again during that Senate Committee on Energy hearing about the Davao-Samal submarine cable project. We would like to report that as of this date, there is still no application to the Commission on this particular project. So given the information that was gathered during the discussions in the committee hearing, we have initiated an investigation as to this project, and we will issue the necessary orders or directives to Nordeco with respect to this project, given that they have not filed any application to this date. Next slide, please. As an update on the various processes involving NGCP, we would like to report that we have completed the audits on several aspects of the operations of the NGCP, and we have, I believe, provided copies of the audit reports to the Committee on Energy, and we will provide also to the JCEC for its perusal. We would also like to report that we expect to complete the transmission rate reset review for NGCP for the years 2016 to 2020 in the next few days, and this will cover the fourth regulatory period for the transmission operator. And we will also proceed to resolve the rulemaking petition that was filed by NGCP asking the Energy Regulatory Commission to cover only the years 2016 to 2020 under the fourth regulatory period, and then cover the rest of the another 5-year period for the fifth regulatory period. We are also completing, in relation to that, the review for the fifth regulatory period, because as you all know, and there has been no reset over the last more than 10 years. So we are trying to catch up on the timeline for NGCP, because these rate resets should be forecasted instead of now we're doing an actual review of their costs. We have also issued a show cause order to NGCP for the 37 delayed projects, and NGCP has complied. They have submitted their explanation, very detailed. We are happy with their explanation in terms of substance of information, and we are continuing to evaluate the justifications that they have submitted. What's important here, Your Honors, is that there were details it was a very detailed explanation, and we can work together with DOE to identify areas where we can assist on right-of-way issues and other issues that the delayed projects have suffered, so that it's not just penalties that we can talk about, is really solutions to realizing all these projects. In the next slide, touching upon the generation sector, we recognize the point made by Congressman Marcoleta earlier, but we have not provided here, sir, the full updates on generation rate, but we can submit to this committee our analysis of the generation rates over the last 12 months. Also incorporating in that analysis the trend in the global coal prices, so that we can see how dependent we are to a certain extent on the movement and how affected our prices get by the movement of global coal prices. But there are also areas where we see a divergence between the movement of global coal prices and the generation rates. And these are the interesting points in that analysis we will provide to the committee. As part of our efforts to increase transparency in generation rates, we have provided on our website our generation rates database, the full set of rates of all electric utilities and distribution companies and electric cooperatives in the Philippines are found in the website of the ERC. There's a map, you can click on the pin, and it will show you the rates of all the utilities in that particular region. We're also completing the fuel cost audit that's being passed on to audit the fuel cost that has been passed on to consumers by distribution utilities and electric cooperatives. There were only 16 utilities in the first round of requests that complied with our order for information. With another round of show cause orders issued to the 100 that initially did not comply, 65 already complied. So we are undertaking the review of all those submissions. Also, in the last Senate committee hearing, there was a discussion on the issue of SFELAPCO and the order that the commission had issued for them to refund the rates that were charged to the consumers of that distribution utility in spite of the absence of an authority from the Energy Regulatory Commission. We have denied their motion for reconsideration and have imposed the fines, penalties, and the order for refund. As of today, SFELAPCO has appealed our denial order to the Court of Appeals. So this matter is now pending with the Court of Appeals. Next slide, please, is just our repeated plea to the JCEC. We have a pending request to the JCEC on this matter involving the public offer requirement or the public listing requirement that's in Section 43T of EPIRA. This provision of law requires a generation company to make a public offer or a public listing of at least 15% of its common shares in our stock market. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but as a matter of fact, when EPIRA was passed, the RE Act was not yet enacted. RE Act was enacted in 2008. So EPIRA could not have contemplated the emergence of small RE companies, 1 megawatt solar plant, for example. So could not have contemplated these companies to go and do public listing. So our plea with the JCEC is, if it is possible, because now, the effect is that these small renewable energy companies or companies that are not able to do public listing cannot get a certificate of compliance, which requires the public offer compliance, the public offer listing. Is if the committee can consider the suspension of this requirement for the small RE facilities and those standalone or what we call single asset owners. They're not part of portfolios. They're not big developers. If the requirement can be suspended, in the meantime that the law, we know that the permanent solution is an amendment to the law. But if that cannot be done quickly, we hope that the committee can consider the suspension. That's our final slide, Your Honor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Attorney De Malanta. Now let's move on, go to the National Electrification Commission, NEA, and that would be Antonio Mariano Almeida. Sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the commission informed me of there's no topic to report, but I'll be ready to answer any issues relating to the electric cooperatives operation and the rural electrification issues, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Almeida. Now let's go to the National Transmission Corporation of Transco. Transco, are you here?
Yes, good
And that will be
afternoon,
Ms.
Your
Dina
Honor.
Dizon. You're being recognized, Ma'am Dizon.
Thank you, Your Honor. For Transco, we will be ready to respond to questions that will be propounded.
Good, short and sweet. How about National Power Corporation and NPC? Where's NPC? NPC is here. Calling once, twice, thrice. Nope.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and to the members, honorable members of this committee.
Where
This
is he?
This
Okay,
is
online.
from National Power Corporation.
And your name, sir? And what is your name?
Maximo de los Reyes from National Power Corporation.
Mr. De Los Reyes. Yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. We are ready to answer if there is a question regarding the operations of SPAG, National Power Corporation, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. De Los Reyes. And now let's go to the Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corporation, or PISAM.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good
That would
afternoon,
be
all
you,
the members.
Mr. Tamayo, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same manifestation from PISAM. We're ready to answer questions should there be any during the course of the proceedings.
Okay, and I see here the Chief Governance Officer of PEMC, Mr. Fortunato Lainez. Sir.
Good afternoon, sir. We'll be ready to answer any questions in relation with the governance of the wholesale electricity spot market.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Attorney Jose Ronaldo Valles, First Vice President for the Regulatory Management of Meralco. Attorney Valles, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. We have no presentation, but they would be ready to respond to all the questions that may be asked.
Thank you. And the last but not the least, we have, mamaya pa pala NGCP. We have Miss Ruth U. Owen, and I can't read your title, ma'am. Sorry.
Yes, I'm the chairperson of the Management Association of the Philippines Energy Committee. I'm happy to answer questions on behalf of our members in the private sector.
Thank you. Last but not the least, we have the NGCP manager, Miss Maria Bernadette Gan. Ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. With your indulgence, we have prepared materials presenting detailing the highlights on NGCP and its mandate. If you would allow us to present the same.
Go ahead po.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, with your
Yes,
indulgence,
Secretary Latilio.
the Senate Chair did indicate a while ago about the lifeline rates, the lifeliners. So we would just like to inform you that we are in close coordination with ERC and DSWD in order to determine how best to implement the lifeline rate modifications, because we have already postponed the deadline by 1 month, but we are still getting a low registration rate for lifeliners. So
Because they were not properly informed. So,
that they have been informed, Mr. Chairman, but it
Kasi
is
pa ako po, hindi ko alam yan. Kasi kung alam ko yan, tutulong po ako sa inyo, gagamitin ko po yung programa ko sa radyo. May programa rin po yung mga kasamahan ko rito tulad ni
yes.
Congressman Marcoleta para ma-disseminate properly yung information na napakahalaga po lalo sa mga mahirap nating kababayan. Hindi alam na malaki pa lang 50% ata ang madi-discount sa kanila kung sino po ay
Even almost 100%.
almost 100% from the poorest of the poor.
Yes.
Sa ngayon kasi binabase po yan sa consumption. Ano? So dapat yan, pag poorest of the poor ka, and DSWD will the one that would do the assessment, libre ka. Anyway, NGCP, unless kung hindi ka pa ready, then we will start the questions, siguro? Question and answer?
Mr. Chair, I think they're just trying to present the material po.
Naghang yung presentation. So maybe sa question and answer ka na lang sasagot. O para mapabilis tayo rito. Ako, mag-umpisa na ako ng tanong and then of course, my co-chair later on. I would like to direct my questions to ERC. Sabi niyo po, by 2028, yung forecast niyo po, potential households na makakabitan po ng kuryente ay aabot sa 31. Naya pala, sorry. So Naya pala. Naya, 31,143,804. Okay? And meron po kayong year 2022, 23, 4, 5, 6. Okay, magaganda po yung mga numbers dito. Ano po? Ang tanong ko po, are we right on track?
Mr. Chair, actually, that was prepared during our initial budget preparation. But we modified that, Mr. Chair, in the sense that we transformed it on a per household basis because the information you have right now is per sitio basis. After the statement of the President during his last SONA that he wants total electrification by 2028, we tried to adapt to a more detailed methodology on acquiring the number of households that should be covered by total electrification by 2028. And Mr. Chair, I would be, if you're in indulgence, I would submit to you a modified report on that because we adopted a methodology by adopting the latest Philippine Statistics Authority census last 2020, and we included the incremental growth until the year 2028. So we arrived at a 5-year program of which there would be a target of 17,863 households by 2028. And at present, we are only at the 89% level. By 2024, we target to a 91% level. Our target would be 17,050,000 household. By 2025, we should reach by 93.75% electrification. By 2026, we should reach by 96.25% electrification. By 2027, 98.5% electrification. And hopefully, by 2028 we reach 100% electrification. Now, the 5-year program have a total funding requirement of 69.79 billion, broken down into 7.7 billion for the distribution line expansion, 0.62 billion for the barangay line extension program, and 39.39 billion for the upgrade solutions on total electrification. Out of the 69.79 billion, we are projecting for the 5-year program, 12.77 billion is needed for year 2024.
But so far, are we right on track? Are we achieving our goal?
Given the limited funding support, I think we are prepared to implement the project, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think NGCP is ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So who is NGCP? NGCP is a transmission provider mandated to deliver reliable and quality power to its customers. As shown in the diagram, NGCP manages the transmission highway that bridges the generation companies or the power plants that generate and supply power, and the transmission customers, such as DUs, who then distribute the power to the end user customers as households and industries. Next slide, please. How is NGCP's performance measured? To ensure that NGCP's operational and technical performance adhere to a set of standards, the ERC has determined a set of performance indicators to measure the reliability of the grid, outage frequency, stability of the grid, and customer satisfaction. So under each of the segregated categories, we ensure the reliability of the grid by adhering the performance indicators as follows: system availability, system interruption severity index, CON-A or congestion availability, and ASI or the ancillary services availability index. We also have outage frequency or frequency of tripping, then stability of the grid on the frequency limit compliance and voltage limit compliance, and the customer satisfaction. We note, Mr. Chair, that similar to the performance indicators during Transco time, so these are the indicators set by the ERC, certain additions such as the CSI, CON-A, and the ASI. Also, these have equivalent performance indicators as far as distribution utilities are also concerned. Next slide, please. So what does NGCP do to support its mandate? So in order to achieve the standards set for NGCP, being the transmission provider at the forefront of NGCP's fulfillment of its mandate are our planning and engineering team, which build and construct the transmission lines, the system operations, which manage the dispatch of power from generators to end users while ensuring stability of the power of the grid, operations and maintenance, which ensure the upkeep and maintenance of transmission facilities, and metering, which provide metering services to SM and our customers. Next slide, please. We note that over the years from 2009 to 2022, there has been considerable improvement in the grid performance, as illustrated in the slide. We note that there were less frequent outages, less frequent transmission interruptions, increased transmission system availability, more stable transmission voltage, and more stable transmission frequency. Ultimately, there was an 81% reduction in transmission outages. Next slide, please. NGCP is not a construction company. A significant portion of operations involves building transmission lines to support our main mandate, which is to provide stable, secure, and reliable transmission services. Challenges it may encounter in the construction of the transmission projects may still be recovered by other ways of managing the transmission system. For For so long as NGCP is able to maintain reliability and stability of the grid and minimize transmission related to disturbances, it is still doing its job. Next slide, please. NGCP must operate and maintain transmission assets. An important part of our operations involves ensuring that lines are kept clean and free from obstruction to ensure that the reliable transmission of power, as many already know, to restore transmission services during typhoons and other emergencies. Maintenance is an important tool to maintain reliability and stability of the grid and minimize transmission-related disturbances. This is NGCP doing its job. NGCP manages the flow of power in the transmission system. A system operator manages the delivery of power from generators to end users while ensuring the balance of supply and demand within the grid. This is a primary tool for NGCP to improve reliability and stability of the grid and minimize transmission-related disturbances. This is NGCP doing its job. NGCP provides metering services.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Everybody here already knows what NGCP is doing and ano po yung tungkulin ng NGCP. Alam na po namin lahat dyan. Unless kung meron po kayong sasabihin na bago na hindi pa namin alam, then go ahead. Halimbawa, ano yung mga problema na encounter ninyo? Ano po yung mga ginagawa nyo para matugunan yung mga problema yon? If not, then I'm gonna open the floor now for question and answer portion. Okay? Kasi alam na po namin lahat yan. Kung ano po NGCP, NGCP is doing the job. Of course, as far as you know, you are doing your job. But as far as other people know, you are not doing your job. That's why we're here. And we're gonna talk about that later. For now, kung puro ganun po sasabihin nyo para pang PR, pasensya na mama, parang nag-PR lang kayo rito, and alam na po namin yan. Okay? So, meron ba kayong gustong sabihin pa na mga problema na encounter ninyo, at ano yung mga problema yon, at paano po na-address, at paano kami makatulong? Kung hindi ma'am, kung puro NGCP is doing its job, then move on na tayo sa question and answer portion. Is that okay?
Mr. Chair, maybe just in relation to what we presented, I think what we want to highlight here is that the performance indicators are valid indicators of NGCP as transmission provider. And regarding the concern of the Commission.
Performance, as far as performance is concerned, we have the ARC na gumagawa nga ng audit sa NGCP. Later nga, I have some questions for them to answer. So, di ba mas maganda yung manggagaling sa kanila yung performance audit, hindi galing sa NGCP. Of course, binigay niyo sa kanila and then yung whatever it is that you gave them, they will analyze it to see kung talagang tama nga yung mga binibigyan niyo information at sila na pong gagawa ng assessment kung tama nga tumutugma doon sa kanilang expectation at doon sa mga binibigyan sa kanilang mga information kung yan tama. Okay? So let's just, is it okay if we'll just kind of move on with questions and answer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Questions? Okay. I will yield first to raise his questions and concerns to my co-chair, Congressman Velasco. Kanina pa kasi siya atat na gustong pindutin yung galing pa sa Congress at mga kasamahan niya. And then Congressman Velasco, you are recognized. The floor is yours, sir.
Maraming salamat po, co-chair. Hindi naman po sa sobrang atat, but it's more of trying to
nagigil kasi very interested ka
no.
topic natin.
It's because more of, Mr. Chair, na talagang napakainit nga na usapin itong enerhiya, mainly because it affects each and every one of us. Simula po sa ating mga anak, pag sila nag-aaral, magbabasa, yung iba gusto mag-aircon, mag-electric fan, tapos walang kuryente. It already affects education nung bata. So, sa murang edad pa lang ng isang mamamayan natin, apektado na talaga ng energy. So this is such a very important issue na kinakailangan nating himayin at itakal. So it's been more than a year already since our energy department has taken over the reins. So during the first year, during that time, ang tinitingnan ko lang po is a certain update, trying to look at where you guys are heading, but it's already a year. So definitely, kailangan natin tingnan kung nagagawa na ba po natin yung mga pinapromise natin. And more or less, ang dito po sa JCEC, kagaya po sa Committee on Energy of the House and the Senate, ang gusto po natin makita, it's been how many years since the passing of the EPIRA? And definitely gusto po natin, kagaya po sinabi ni Honorable Marcoleta kanina, we have to look at yung primary purpose why EPIRA was passed. No? Yung affordability, efficiency, yung mga ganyan po. But sabi ko nga po as to the parang roadmap na tinitingnan natin for DOE, specifically, I believe on top of LNG, ang roadmap natin for DOE is also to push for renewables. Okay. As to renewables, sabi ko po, wala pa akong problema sa renewables. My only problem with renewables is ang kanyang intermittency. So if DOE can come up with a plan to be able to answer, I'm sure ang palagi nating reasoning with intermittency and the supply would be transmission and distribution lines. But I think it should be more than that. For the past few years, I've always been harping at napansin ko po kasi, Mr. Chair, na sa pagpapatayo po natin ng mga power plants, mga ilang years ago ko pa po ito pinupush Because parang ang pansin ko sa pagpapatayo ng mga power plants natin ever since, kung saan gusto magtayo ng investor, doon tayo magtatayo. Which para po sa akin, hindi dapat. Because pag ganun ang ginagawa natin, for example, in Bataan, sobrang daming power plants. Parang powerhouse natin ng Bataan. Ang problema, hindi makakalusot. Bakit? Kasi yung highway niya, barado na. Parang EDSA po natin yan, ang hirap dumaan. So, pasa tayo ngayon sa transmission natin sa NGCP. So, they have to work hard to be able to deliver that road. Yung tinatawag nating power lines. Ang problema, they're also burdened. Yan. Burdened po sila for some reasons na I guess we should palagi natin naririnig, right of way, mga ganyan. So it's been how many years, Mr. Chair? Right of way tayo ng right of way. So it's been how many years, hindi pa rin natin ma-resolve right of way. So I think ang ating DOE with ERC, I think we have to come up, especially this, with the help also of our joint, our GCEC, should try to come up with a way to be able to help yung transmission provider, yung system operator natin, how to resolve this ROW problems. Nandun po yung problema natin. As to yun sa connections po nun sa Visayas, Mindanao. What was the problem na binigay ng NGCP before? Right of way. May mga humaharang. Yung sa Visayas, right of way. Palagi na lang pong right of way. So I think the crux of the problem, yung punot dulo talaga, is ROW. I think we have to come together. Tayo po lahat, let's try to come up with a solution on how to be able to solve this right-of-way problems. So yan yung isa. Kaya nga sinasabi ko, DOE, humble suggestion, nasabi ko na rin po ito, Mr. Chair, kay Secretary, DOE should play an active role. Active role in what? Determining areas kung saan natin itatayo ang power plant. Determining areas on what type or source of power we need in those areas. So that kitang-kita naman po natin ang buong transmission plan ng buong bansa. We can see which areas ang hindi pa masyado clogged we could get from this. Or kunyari, ang concentration ng electricity dito, dito may lalagay. Parang ganun. I'm sure DOE is doing that already. And that is what I want to hear from DOE in the coming years. Na ma-resolve na po natin ito. Ngayon, ang isa kong gusto sanang itanong at medyo kinakabahan ako. Ito po, Mr. Chair, as to renewables. Kaya medyo kinakabahan. So now we're pushing for renewables. Ano bang target natin? 2030, ilang percent of the mix ang ating magiging renewables? 25? 35%. Okay. In 2040, ilang percent tayo? 50%. As to, umpisa tayo sa 35%. As to the 35%, ilang percent po dyan ang solar? Do we have a certain mix now or it's any renewable source po tayo dyan?
We don't have the exact numbers, but we can submit to you
Okay.
later on the projections.
Okay, but looking at how everything's going, although the DOE is pushing for wind power also, but definitely yung solar hindi mawawala eh. So on top of our solar farms that are being put up, may mga solar panels rin also in the houses. My question is, may plano ba ang ating DOE together with the DNR? Because gaano po katagal ang lifespan ng isang solar panel? 10 years? 15 years? Mga ganun ah. Sa tingin ko po, Honorable Kawako, it won't reach 20. Ang feeling ko lang dyan, effective niya mga 15 years ang isang solar panel. On top of that,
Makasingit lang.
sige po.
Sa question
Yes po.
ni co-chair ko.
Yes po.
Nabanggit mo kasi yung RE tapos saturated na yung area at
Yes.
tanggap na application. In fact, during the last hearing we had, marami kayong mga naaprubahan na nag-apply ng RE. Bigay ka ng bigay ng permit pero hindi naman po nagagamit pa, hindi po napapa-operate. May mga balita na yan po ay nag-aantay lang sila na may bibili na ibinibenta nila, pinapasa rin nila sa mga investors. So dapat yun na-screen nyo po yun para hindi inundated po yung area tulad sinasabi po ni co-chair ko rito, Congressman Velasco. So how do you manage that?
Merong deadline, so ang the service contractor has certain deliverables, and so we are strictly monitoring this so that if they fail to deliver according to their schedule, then we will be able to cancel them.
Okay. All right. Sorry
Yes
to
po.
interrupt.
No, it's okay po, Mr. Chair.
Co-chair.
But going back, ang pinupunto ko lang po, because I think we're also we're missing something with our plan. I don't know if the Department of Energy already has a plan with this, but ako po, wala pa ako naririnig. So, in the coming years, we've already started a lot of solar farms. I think in 10, 15 years, I think nga in 10 years or 5 years, meron na po tayong problema. Ano ba yung problema po natin? Pag ang isang solar panel ay hindi na po gumana, saan po natin itatapon? Number one, hindi po natin pwede itapon lang yan sa basurahan. Why? It has toxins. Two, kung itatapon po natin sa basurahan, at kung saan dump site natin tatapon po yan, ang problema ko po doon, maglilik yung toxins niyan. Ang gusto ko po sana, DOE would come up with a disposal plan. DOE would come up together in partnership with the DNR. Kung makapagtayo tayo ng recycling plant for solar panels, not only for solar panels, but also for battery. Because batteries, mas mabilis ang lifespan yan. Siguro in 7-8 years. 5 ba? Okay. So there are differing, but since we're already starting with renewables and we're targeting 35%, we're targeting 50%, ang hindi po natin nakikita na looming problem in the coming years, disposal. So I hope for DOE, we'd come up with a plan already as early as now. And let's not wait for how many years? Kung this year, next year, we already come up with a plan. If we ask the solar panel providers to parang may buyback or something or they do something, I leave it up to the DOE. So yan po yung isa kong nakita. That's for DOE. Of course.
Yung sinabi niyo po na gumagawa na kayo ng review doon sa mga nag-apply ng RE sa mga lugar at marami doon hindi niyo pa na-actionan or iba na-actionan niyo na. Kaya lang hindi pa rin po nag-ooperate. Meron na ho ba kayo doon sa ginawa niyo pag-evaluate, pag-assess kung sino dapat ang kanselahin na because hindi pa nung nag-ooperate, nasasayang lang po, nakatenga lang at walang nangyari?
We will provide the commission with updates on our monitoring.
Pero right now, wala ho ba kayo na
Most
mabibigyan ng figure sa amin? Ilan na po ba?
Mr. Chairman, the ones
30%,
that are live, there are still contracts that are, most of them, for example, on the offshore wind, still have to become operational.
Gaano kadalas po ang ginagawa niyo pagre-review doon po sa mga yearly?
Mr. Chairman, yeah.
So every year, so kung gumagawa po kayo ng yearly review, pretty much meron kayong idea kung ilan yung mga nakakansela ninyo, ilan na po yung mga nag-ooperate.
Yes, we have that, and we can provide the commission with the data
And you have that, can you provide us the data?
Yes,
The next-
Mr. Chair.
Next
we
year.
will, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to second everything that the chair of the House, contingent, has said. And I'd like to add one more. If we put a power line, if NGCP builds a transmission line to a solar installation, ano po ang capacity factor ng solar? Di ba 15% lang po? So if it's 15%, paano mababawi yung kapital? Compared to other power sources, it has to either increase the price 6.7 times. There's no other solution. So sino pong magbabayad ng additional transmission cost? Di ba taong bayan? Yung solar proponent.
Ultimately, charge the consumers, Mr. Chair.
Exactly po. So yun po ang pagkulang ng DOE sa impormasyon na binibigay sa ating Pangulo.
Mr. Chair, can I,
Go ahead, you've been recognized.
and to finish with the DOE, para po yung binagit po ni Chair Tulfo kanina regarding the lifeline rate, I think instead of asking for people to register, I think the distribution utility should play an proactive role. Ano yung ibig sabihin? Kasi may, ano naman yan may limitation kung sino lang pwede sa lifeline rate. Tama po ba? Kung ilan ang nako-consume ng isang bahay. So, I'm sure the distribution utility already has that record. Bakit pa natin kailangan hintayin mag-register? Because I heard registration As far as I know, if you're below that lifeline rate, automatic dapat yung it used to be. So yun po yung sinasabi ko, Mr. Chair, dapat balik tayo na I don't know kung ano naging problems ng DOE or ERC with regards to the lifeline rate. Pero ang tingin ko, kesa we wait for everyone to register sa hirap ng buhay po natin, ng ating mga kababayan, wala na po sa isip nila mag-register. I think it's parang a benefit that we have to give our kababayans na automatic, if you fall within the lifeline rate, bigay mo yung lifeline rate.
Mr.
Parang
Chair.
ganun yung-
Para sa akin, Co-Chair, I don't think that's it. For me, that would be fair. Kasi nga po, magbibigay ako sa example. Meron halimbawa dyan, may-ari ng isang kondo o may-ari ng isang rest house o beach house na once in a year lang siya pupunta. So hindi niya masyado nagagamit yung kanyang kuryente. Siyempre, doon siya sa mababa na papatak na binabayaran niya o yung kanyang rate, yung kanyang konsumo. So, kung bababasihan natin doon sa present system, qualified siya. So bakit natin siya ililibre samantalang mayaman siya o bilyonaryo pa, rest house niya yun. Kaya-kaya niya bumili ng rest house but
Mr. Chair.
discount. So what I suggest is siguro we go to the DSWD and the DSWD will make the assessment who are these people yung sa the poor sector at yun ang bibigyan. Siguro.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, ako lang po. In addition to Mr. Chair's comment, ako nga po, nakikita nga po natin yon certain areas, but I believe that the distribution utility already knows which ones are already within the poverty line. And tama po si Mr. Chair, in cooperation with the DSWD, with the distribution utility, magtulong-tulong po para naman po. Kasi po yung napansin ko, Mr. Chair, for the past years, parang yung hinihintay po natin yung magre-register yung mga kababayan natin na sa poverty, ano po natin. Parang hindi po talaga magre-register. Mainly because siguro nahihiya.
Alam niyo, Co-Chair,
Yes.
meron naman tayo tinatawag na 4Ps.
Yes.
So lahat ng member ng 4Ps,
Sigurado na.
automatic member na agad.
Yeah.
Kasi yun na, in-evaluate na yun ng,
Yes po.
ng DSWD. At na-screen na yan, na-check na yan ng barangay, ng LGU, DSWD.
Yes.
So, na-check na sila at tumatanggap sila ng pasok sa 4Ps, dapat pasok na rin sila dun sa lifeliner.
Yeah, that's why I think the ERC should review on the proper implementation of the lifeline rate. So yung kagaya po ng sinabi pa ni Mr. Chair na those already registered in the 4Ps, siguro naman po medyo automatic na tayo doon. Unless ang problema ko lang rin po doon, Mr. Chair, yung mga kasama sa 4Ps, dahil po ang dami nila nakukuhang ayuda, ay napapabili na po ng aircon, napapabili na po ng... So they go over the lifeline rate. So ang tingin ko po, Mr. Chair, it should be proper coordination between the DSWD, the ERC, the DOE, and the distribution utility. Basta po ang main objective po natin for the lifeline rates, let's make it very accessible para po sa ating mga kababayan. And that's the whole reason why nagpo-push po tayo ng lifeline rate. Yes.
Mr. Chair, very quickly. May we know the threshold mag-qualify sa lifeline rate?
Mr. Chairman, the threshold differs from utility to utility. That's why there's no uniform one. But for example, Meralco and Visayan Electric Company, that's 100 kilowatt hours and below, and then graduated. So the difficulty is that the 4-piece beneficiaries may not be the registered household consumer with the distribution utility. So we have asked the cooperation not only of Meralco and of the electric cooperatives. So that's why they need to verify the names and the IDs of the beneficiaries of 4-piece. So it doesn't become an automatic process.
Mr.
No.
Chair.
Kasi, sorry, mabilis lang to. When I say, now, once sila ay tumatanggap na ng 4-piece, and most of these people na tumatanggap ng 4-piece, wala sila mga bahay. Sila ay nakikita na lang, meron silang mga kubo-kubo, hindi po sila nakatira sa mga condominium, townhouse. So, and in some cases, sila yung tinatawag na sa informal settler. So, dapat matik na qualified na sila. Of course, all you need to do is go to the barangay kung duda kayo, and the barangay can attest na, yes, tumatanggap ng 4-piece yan at talagang mahirap yan. Diba? And then siguro yung utility provider, kunya sa Meralco, makikita naman talaga na pag nag-inspect sila na talagang mahirap to, kabitan na. Gawin na silang qualified dun sa lifeline rate.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Balikan ko lang po yung sinabi ng aming House Chairman tungkol po sa waste. Doon po sa nuclear, no? Ang waste at saka ang end of life decommissioning, merong 6 centavos yung waste per kilowatt hour, meron 6 centavos din yung decommissioning, end of life. Ngunit sa haba po ng buhay ng nuclear, 80 years, ang laki po ng pondong nakokolekta. At dun sa pagkakonti ng fuel waste, yung high level waste, dun sa nakokolekta, kaya naman din, sapat na po yung pera para doon. So kung 6 centavos po for number 1, waste disposal, 6 centavos po sa end of life decommissioning, ang question, sapat ba yun para i-dispatcha ang waste ng solar? So yun po ang kailangan imbestigahan po ninyo.
Okay. And Congressman Marcoleta, do you have a question for?
Mr. Chair, if I can finish my last 2 questions, and
Go
then
ahead.
we can pass it to our members. Sorry, last 2. So I'm finished with the DOE. With the ERC, with the ERC naman, when we were listening to ERC a while ago, we can actually hear talaga napakadaming trabaho ng ERC. So some delays made before for the past years, siguro understandable. But kaya nga po, Mr. Chair, sinasabi ko po, napakahalaga yung gagawin po nating amendment of the EPIRA. So kasama po niyan yung sa strengthening at pag-improve po ng siguro personnel ng ERC. Kinakailangan po talaga, kagaya po yung mga lagi po natin naririnig yung regulatory reset, no? Ang tanong ko po sa ERC, sino ba po, ma'am, ang nire-regulatory reset natin?
Thank you po, Mr. Chair. The regulatory reset under the current structure is undertaken over the regulated entities, which is composed of 1, the transmission operator, and all distribution utilities. So including private, the private DUs and the electric cooperatives. Although magkaiba po sila ng framework.
So alam po natin sa NGCP, ano po yan, delayed na po ang regulatory reset natin. I guess dun sa mga private DUs rin natin, delayed na rin po, ma'am. So are we talking about all private DUs in the whole country, no? Delayed na rin? For how many years na po, ma'am? 10 years? 5? 10?
Mga more than 5 po, mga 7 years po yata
7,
yung
10.
delay. Opo, naka-groupings po kasi sila, so iba-iba sila ng periods.
So very important po kasi ang regulatory reset po natin, mainly because pag ginawa na po ng ERC yung kanilang periodic regulatory reset, nakikita po natin kung medyo na-overcharge or hindi, and then pag na-overcharge, binabalik po yan sa ating mga consumers. So very important po to sa ating mga kababayan, mainly because kinakailangan na masunod natin yung mga periods ng regulatory reset. Specifically, not only for NGCP, but also for our private DUs and our electric cooperatives.
Thank you po.
But I agree, kinakailangan po tulungan natin ng ERC, napakabigat ng trabaho, and hopefully, definitely kami rito sa JCEC, I'm sure DOE also, sama-sama po tayo para magtutulong-tulong. Okay, last po ako. Sa NGCP po, sa NGCP naman, ang gusto ko lang itanong sa NGCP, or gusto ko lang sabihin sa NGCP, definitely alam po natin na from the hearings, not only today, but for the past years, palagi po ang sinasabi natin, there's a lot of delays, mainly because of right-of-way or for some other issues. And sa akin lang kasi, parang for NGCP, parang mag-throw kayo ng kamay, sabihin nyo, kailangan namin ng tulong. Yun po ang gusto ko po sabihin sa NGCP. Huwag po kayong magtago sa inyong four walls, sa inyong building. Come out, extendahan, DOE, ERC, dito sa JCEC. Sabihin niyo po sa amin, kailangan niyo po ng tulong. Bakit po? Kasi ang buong bansa po natin naapektuhan. Transmission lines, that's the backbone po natin. Diyan po dumadaan ang kuryente ng mga power plants. Pag may problema po tayo dyan, apektado buong bansa. Apektado ang ekonomiya. And what I am asking for NGCP also is for them to be transparent. Okay? Transparency po tayo. Always remember, yung franchise na binigay po sa atin, it's not a right that was granted by the national government, by the people of the Philippines. So, may tanging right po talaga dyan, mga kababayan po natin. So, anything that you do na stops the mga pangangailangan ng national government to be able to review, to check, medyo parang sampal po sa aming mga Pilipino yan. So, andito po kami, ang JCEC. I'm knocking on the doors of NGCP. Hindi po tayo magkalaban. Ano po? We have to be working hand in hand. Ganito po yung napansin ko po nung kahapon o nung isang araw na nagkaroon kami ng hearing for the Panay Negros blackout last April. Alam niyo po, Mr. Chair, punot dulo, naging ending. Alam mo po ano naging problema, Mr. Chair? Wala pong coordination yung DU, walang coordination yung power plant, at walang coordination ng NGCP. So that is why when I talked to Secretary yesterday, I think, Mr. Secretary, you have to step in. You have to step in for the proper coordination of these entities. I think ang DOE has to play a very proactive role para hindi mangyari, or we put up a certain system para magkakita-kitaan itong mga ating mga sectors dito sa energy, the generation, the transmission, and the distribution. Para naman po yung mga ganitong mga pangyayari na nangyari po sa Panay at Negros, hindi na po maulit. I still have a lot more questions, but I will give the floor already to my fellow members and Mr. Chair.
Before we
Maraming salamat po.
meron lang talong katanungan before kay Congressman Coleta. Nung last na hearing natin, nabanggit ko nga po yung sa 3%. 3% na nga lang binabayad nila sa franchise tax, pinapasa pa. And na-appreciate ko po yung ginawa niyong aksyon at agad-agad sinuspindi niyo po yun. Ang tanong ko po, dalawa, una, kailan po ma-implement yun? And then pangalawa, para isang sagot na lang po, gumawa po kayo ng national security auditing check. So ano na po yung resulta sa ginawa nyo yun? Pakisagot muna dun sa una, kailan po ma-implement yung suspension?
Opo. Doon po sa ginawa po naming resolution, sabi po natin doon ay 15 days from the publication in a newspaper of general circulation. Tine-check ko lang po kung anong date natin na publish para po count natin yung 15 days po na yun. But most likely po, next billing period, kasi po naka-billing period naman po yan, mababawas na po yung kolekta po na 3%.
Okay.
Apa.
How about dun po sa ginawa ng National Security Assessment?
Yung pong audit, yung
Sa audit, opo.
Opo. Those were discussed also with NGCP. Merong mga recommendations pong nilabas dun sa report na yon. Some of which have been implemented with NGCP. Now we're waiting for their updates dun sa iba pa pong measures na nirecommend nung as a result of the audit.
May we know ano po yung nakita nyo doon na dapat i-improve ng NGCP para masiguro yung seguridad ng ating national grid?
We would be happy to provide po the committee in an executive session if you please, Mr. Chair, kasi po very sensitive po yung information and we can just provide po in executive session.
Okay, very good. Now, let's go to a member of this committee, si Congressman Marcoleta. Congressman Marcoleta, the floor is yours.
Salamat
sir.
po, Mr. Chair. I will start from what my lord, Kong Velasco, pointed out to the DOE, which is correct. You should play a very active and supportive role. Kasi as I have observed during your confirmation hearing, we started by saying that kasi parang ang sinabi mo, you're putting a demarcation line between economic policies and, sabi ko, no, I think you should cross the line. Sapagkat I believe under your own charter, is it Republic Act 7836 or whatever it is, under Section 5, maski yung catch-all provision niya dyan, because parang ikaw naman talaga yung major department that oversees the entire energy sector of our country. You will recall, Secretary Popo, that I had a problem in the present rate-setting methodology now being utilized by the ERC. I noted that prior to the enactment of EPIRA, we are governed by the regime of RORP. I do not know the explanation why sometime later ERC, without consulting with Congress, transition from RORB to PBR. Sa aking palagay, Mr. Chair, dun nagkaroon ng napakalaking problema. I'm always on the side of affordability. Sa palagay ko kasi, Sec po, yung RORB parang is more solid in basis eh. Ang sabi nga nila, if something can be measured, it can be managed. So sa RORB, ang pinag-uusapan yung CAPEX, yung capital, the extent of capital invested by an entity which is entitled to a rate of return. And then the Supreme Court came in and sabi niya, well, sabi niya, in the wealth of our decisions, sabi niya, is always, yung rate of return is 12% per annum. Yun ang pinipilit natin. But, hindi ko alam, is ERC in a position to explain why you suddenly transition from RORB to PBR? Although I will anticipate that you will probably invoke Section 43F. Will you do that?
Yes, Your Honor, that's the mandate po under EPIRA.
Yes, but if you will invoke that, ang nakalagay naman dyan, if you prefer to look for other methodology, ang dapat sabi niya, internationally accepted methodology. when I asked Sec Popo during the confirmation hearing, tinanong ko kung international exercise, hindi siya. Totoo naman yun. We're not even signatory to whatever covenant or agreement. Basta na lang nating napanaginip na okay na to. The problem with that is related to the regulatory reset, madam. Kasi under the PBR regime, Mr. Chair, ang gagamitin nating references is the WACC. Ito yung weighted average cost of capital na sinasabi ni my lord. Tingnan, under the WACC, nung nagano kayo ng first, second, and third regulatory reset, I remember na yung WACC is something like 8-point-something%. Tama, ma'am, di ba?
Chairman Barin's time.
Yeah, okay. So third regulatory reset, ano, mga 8-something, tama?
Yung pong third, 15% na po yun.
Ha?
Third regulatory reset, Your Honor.
Yes.
Mga 15 na po yung WACC.
Hindi nga, wala nga kayong back eh. Yung ano nyo, yung hanggang sa third regulatory reset lang kayo. It's only 8-point-something%. Ang ginagamit nyo is 15% straight. Hindi nga kayo nag-ano eh, hindi na kayo nag-ano ng 2011 to 2015. Wala kang regulatory reset.
Hindi po. Yung pong third regulatory period, which is still had the complete set of building blocks, not just the WACC, that covered the period 2011 to 2015 po. 2016 onwards, yun po yung ginagawa po natin ngayon. So kaya po, nabanggit ko kanina, walang naging reset since 2010 kasi po yung pong 2010, forecast po yun for 2011 to 2015.
Kaya nga, wala kayong regulatory reset ng 2016 to 2020. Why?
Opo.
This is the
Hindi,
problem.
factual po.
Kasi
Factual.
kung ang WACC, ang binabase sa WACC is Bloomberg and Securities and Exchange Commission. Kung 8% lang yung WACC and you are using 15%, napakalaki ng diferensya nun. Windfall profit para sa distributor because you failed to compute the reset. 2016 to 2020. Ngayon, 2020, 2023 na tayo. So lumagpas ka na sa 2021 mo to 2025, wala pang regulatory reset. So problema na naman. So what will happen? Mr. Chair, there is no explanation from ERC why they failed to compute the WACC. Ngayon, what will you do you have to catch up, but the most important question there is, what will you do to what has been collected by the distribution utility? Will you refund them?
Order po a refund, you mean, Your Honor?
Huh?
Order po. Depende po dun sa outcome ng reset. It can result in a refund or a recovery.
15% nga yung ano eh, yung beta reference ninyo is 8-something%. Nakita ko yun eh.
Apo.
So between 15% and 8-something%, there's a difference of something like 7%. Kinakailangang ibalik sa tao yun. Yun ang problema. Nakolekta na po yun eh. Paano gagawin natin?
Kasama
Ibabalik
po-
nyo.
Opo, hindi po kami yun pong nakakuha.
Kasi nga nasa PBR tayo. I asked Sec Popo during his confirmation. Kasi sabi ko, you should cross the line. Do not maintain a dividing line between you and ERC. Regulatory ka policy, but DOE can initiate the policies for purposes of rationalizing economic policies, economic regulations. Papunta tayo lahat dun sa bababa eh. Sabi ko, so Sec Popo, probably I will now expect. Kaya hindi na ako nagpunta sa hearing natin kagabi. Natapos yata kayo, 1:00 na ng madaling araw. Kung nandun pa ako, baka 3 o'clock kayo nakauwi. So, Madam, ang sinasabi natin, you cannot even explain why from RORB na mas matibay na foundation for purposes of putting a reasonable rate of return to the investment by an entity, gumamit pa tayo ng PBR which is based on performance. The problem there is wala kang WACC. Ito nga. Pagkatapos, it is based on their expansion plan. Sabihin na siyempre, Madam ERC, kunyari po, si Kong Alan ang may-ari ng Meralco. Kunwari lang naman po. Congressman Velasco, the owner of Meralco, will go to you. Madam ERC, these are my plans for 2025 to 2028. Very good plans. I will sustain, wala pong brownout, no nothing, no rotation, walang ganyan-ganyan. Pag nakita niyo po, ma'am, siyempre, i-approve niyo. And that will be the very basis of the rates. ERC is not even required to verify whether the plan. You will have to agree with me. Kung
We do, that's part of, that's
yes,
why there
but
are
the
several
verification
audits po.
comes later.
Hindi naman po. There is a verification when they file. The application is verified. There are consultants engaged. That's why I mentioned earlier the technical.
Ang sinasabi ko, ma'am,
expertise.
you will verify. But whether or not nag-materialize yun, that is the problem.
Yun po. Dapat po kasi tinututukan po
Oh,
talaga.
di ba? Wala pong tumututok doon eh. Walang tumututok doon.
Mhm.
Kaya po mataas ang ating kuryente. Hindi ko nga alam kung may babalik natin kasi kailangan i-refund po ito. The difference of 7%, malaki po yun sa isang ordinary consumer. Well, lalo na po yung residential. Ang dami po, kanina po we're talking about the outlook. Ang dami pong gustong mag-develop. Either renewables, solar, wind, and so on. Ganito po kasi ang nangyayari. NGCP, kung ang palaging nadidelay yung project infrastructure and transmission, walang kasiguruhan if the new developers, if you can accept additional capacities. So madidelay sila kasi sinasabi nyo is right of way. Palaging yun ang issue. So, Mr. DOE, kahit na napakaraming gustong mag-apply ng renewables, hindi naman nakakasiguro na makakapasok siya sa dahil sa kulang naman ng ating transmission, problemang malaki yun. Actually, Mr. Secretary, hindi lang naman yung transmission ang kulang eh. Maski na yung SIS, Madam, di ba yung meron kayong impact system impact study? Can you imagine, Secretary, Mr. Chair? Again, I will use my Lord. Tapos na yung na-commission na eh. Yung kanyang solar, which is about 10 megawatts ang capacity. Wala siyang SIS, Madam. You know, the bank will not even finance him. Because the SIS is the parang assurance, parang right to grid.
You can connect to the grid.
Oh, wala kang connection, wala kang kasiguro. Do you think, magsasara na lang siguro? Sayang eh. We're talking about outlooks. We're talking about the prospects. Maganda. Yun na nga. Pati nga yung 3% tax mo eh. Do you want to review your franchise, Madam? Maybe we can rationalize it and probably go to corporate income tax ka na lang. Kasi ang laki ng, aliit ng 3% compared to, 30%. Tapos yung when you buy lands, yung NGCP, kanino po nakapangalan? Sa NGCP or to Transco?
I think the question is directed to the NGCP.
Kanino po nakapangalan yung
Mr. Chair, to my understanding, it's on concession agreement that we can expropriate them under their own. Yes, under the concession agreement, it is provided that NGCP can expropriate on its own. So I think it's named under NGCP po.
Yes, ma'am. I know that. Ang tanong po, na-expropriate ninyo, kanino nakapangalan po yung pangalan? Ay yung, kunwari bumili kayo ng lupa, kasi dadaanan po ng, kanino po nakapangalan yung lupa na na-expropriate ninyo?
Mr. Chair, it's named after NGCP, and then once the concession ends, it's going to be returned or transferred to.
Meron pong clause na ita-transfer nyo yung nabili sa Transco?
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, Your
Really?
Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
You are in a position to submit to us that
Yes, Your Honor.
document that specifies all the lands acquired by NGCP in its transmission mission.
Yes. Yes.
Kunyari, nag-expire na po yung concessioner, babalik po sa Transco.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there are arrangements in the concession agreement that includes the transfer of such land named after NGCP to Transco po. Including all assets. Including all assets.
Babayaran ng Transco o ita-transfer mo lang?
I'm not privy on the details po of the concession agreement, but there is really a provision that.
Ang tanong kasi, ma'am, ito transfer nyo sa Transco, yan, transfer nyo sa Transco, yan ba ay bibili ng Transco sa inyo? Bayaran ba o libre?
Mr. Chair, if you'd allow, I have my colleague with me, Mr. Mark Actu.
Tingnan muna, lang ano. Yun na nga, Secretary. Ang daming magiging problema natin. Halimbawa, hindi lang naman yung NGCP ang nadidelay. Madam ERC, ikaw nadidelay ka rin dun sa processing and approval ng mga rates. So yung poor developer, naghihintay siya ng katakot-takot na panahon. Ito po contributory lahat dun sa pag-assure po natin ng dependable supply po ng ating energy. DOE, gayon rin po, nadidelay sa mga pag-approve nyo ng mga service contracts. Ganun po, contributory din. Pagkatapos po, ang problema ng mga renewables, kung talagang in the future we are aiming na, magkano po, 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040, Mr. Chair. Sigurado kayo? Kasi po, para mangyari yun, tulungan natin sila. Maybe the DOE or the ARC will actively, siguro punta tayo sa Congress, sabihin natin na yun pong land conversion, exempt na po ninyo yung renewables kasi I think this is getting from the feedback, ito ang pinakamatagal makuha ng isang developer mula sa DAR. Pwede ba include mo na yung DAR? Sabihin mo, pagka renewable, wag nyo na pong ano ng land conversion. Yun po hanggang 4 na taon tumatagal po yun. So kawawa naman si Secretary Popo. Gusto niya magkaroon ng maraming renewables. Hindi naman makagalaw, Mr. Chair, kasi nako, pati LGU endorsement lang. Taon ang pinag-uusapan natin. So paano tutulungan? Punta po kayo sa amin, i-drop na po niyo yung bill, pipirma na po ni Congressman Velasco. Tapos na. Andiyan naman si Senator, para matapos lahat. Ganun po yung ano natin. And then, pwede po ba alisin na natin yung maging zero bat uli yung meron po tayong binabayaran na bat sa transmission charge. Meron tayong binabayaran na charge, distribution charge. Meron generation charge. Binayaran na nga ng consumer, pati ba charges lalagyan pa ng bat? Katakot-takot naman na yun. Pati si excise tax sa oil siguro at saka sa coal, tanggalin na rin natin. Ang pwede nating argument, Mr. Chair, sa Department of Finance, ganito na lang. Evidence, I think, showed adequately that economic growth is strongly associated with low electricity. And it helps primarily in spurring manufacturing as well as its productivity. So pagka po yung economic growth mataas, ay palagay ko po, and that is within the objective of EPIRA. Ang sinasabi niya doon, kailangan mababa po ang ating rates para ang ating mga products ay competitive. Magiging ano po, palagay ko si Congressman Abet yata o si hindi, si Congressman Pentibella.
Hindi sila bigyan.
Siya yata yung siya yung
Okay.
author ng ibatlo na kung saan tinanggal niya yung ibalik natin doon. Bababa na naman ang kuryente.
Kontra po kami.
Kung dati, yes, Chair, the late Speaker Fuentebella.
Hindi nga, naalala ko.
Yes.
Yeah, that's in our.
He was against it, but
That was the original objective of EPIRA.
Yeah.
So tanggalin na natin yung i-amend natin yung IBAT, parang section 24 yata yon. Ibalik natin kasi nandoon naman sa section 6 ng EPIRA talaga na zero VAT rated talaga ito. So, sabi natin, kung mapababa natin, may inganyo natin, Mr. Chair, ang negosyo.
Investors.
Lalakas ang investor, lalakas ang economy natin. At doon tayo makakabawi.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, isang singit.
Yes, go ahead.
So, with what is Honorable Marcoleta is discussing, I think first thing we have to understand is sinasabi kasi ni Honorable Marcoleta, babaan natin yung rates ng electricity so that mga investors would come in specifically on the manufacturing side. Ano po? But I think before that, determine muna natin yung mga kapitbahay natin. What are their rates? If we can go lower than them, I think those are the rates that we have to target to be able to be competitive para makapasok yung investors. Yun lang yung nakita ko, boss, na kailangan natin our benchmark for affordable rates.
Yes, boss. Ito yung mga kapitbahay natin, boss. Tayo po, residential, sa perang Pilipino, Mr. Chair, 2021, ito yung pinaka-latest na available. Philippines, 9 pesos and 50 centavos per kilowatt. Thailand, 7 pesos. Indonesia, 5 pesos. Malaysia, 4 pesos. Singapore, 8.50. Vietnam, 6 pesos. Laos People Democratic Republic, 4.50. Myanmar, 6 pesos. Brunei, 4.50.
Congressman Marcoleta, if I may add or makasingit na rin, I understand those rates that you are mentioning now. It's low because they're being subsidized by the government of that country that you are mentioning. In our case, kaya ba yun? Magkaroon tayo ng subsidy from the government para mapababa yung rates natin? Is that a possibility? Is that doable?
Tawag sa atin, boss, true cost.
True cost. Kasi nga naman, tama naman si Congressman Marcoleta, mabababa sa ibang bansa tapos tayo mataas. Yun ay mga bansa na pwede naman nating sabayan na mabigyan natin ng mababang rate yung mga kababayan natin. So, may subsidy sila sa gobyerno. Sa atin, true cost.
True cost, boss.
Lang. Bakit hindi natin magaya?
Madam Chairs, it's really because it's their upstream which subsidizes their downstream. So the oil of Indonesia subsidizes, and the coal, they subsidize they have a pricing which is different for domestic use from export. So that way they subsidize their downstream, their power uses. Same with Indonesia, with Thailand, the same with Vietnam and Thailand and Laos. Hydro of Laos.
May I answer that, Mr. Chair?
Congressman Marcoleta.
When EPIRA was enacted in 2001, wala naman siyang sinabi na yung affordability will be based on whether it is subsidized or not. I don't care whether it is subsidized in Thailand or in Singapore or in Malaysia. Meron din tayong ano eh. Ang problema, Mr. Chair, there seems to be a conflicting I would say, or multiple, parang inconsistent, if not conflicting, multiple policy objectives. For example, in renewables. Ang renewable energy, ang object is to pursue it through feed-in tariff. Di ba? So, ang nangyayari, taas ang presyo ng kuryente, bababa yung welfare. As opposed to tax, pollution tax, ang mangyayari ron, nag-i-increase ang welfare by correctly balancing generation mix. Meron tayong universal charge. Ito, mabuti na nandiyan po ba yung napo ko, NPC, National Power.
Yes, Mr. Chair, present po National Power Corporation.
Mr. NPC, hindi po ba yung NPC is a government corporation?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
A government corporation is mandated to make money, isn't it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, but in a case of NPC SPAG, we are under missionary. Our mandate is missionary.
Alam ko, sinasanong ko po kung dapat po kumikita kayo, hindi ba? Kung hindi, sasara na lang natin pag hindi kumikitang. Kaya nga po tayo mayroong government GOCC. Para po lahat yan kumita para makatulong po sa estado lahat yan, di po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
O yan. Pero may connection sa... pwede po ba ganito? Yung po kasing IRR ng Republic Act 9136, tingnan po ninyo yung Section 7. Parang ang distribution utility dapat mag-remit sa PISAM. Tama po ba yun?
I cannot answer with regards to the distribution utilities, Mr. Chair.
But you can answer if you can read section Rule 7 of the IRR of 9136. Parang nagre-remit sa PISAM. Tama ba? Asan po ba yung PISAM? Can you answer that, please?
Sir, if I may answer dun sa question mo na lahat ng GOCC must make money, maybe I have to make a little correction on that. So from my understanding, hindi dapat lahat ng GOCC ay itinayo para kumita ng pera maliban siguro sa PAGCOR, PCSO, kasi tumutulong pagdating sa tax collection. But there are GOCCs na doesn't have to make money at all. They're there to support the policy of the government. Marami mga GOCC dyan, hindi kailangan kumita ng pera tulad ng PTB4. It's not making money pero nandoon para suportahan ang communication department ng ating gobyerno. And if you don't mind, Congressman Marcoleta, kanina pa kasi itong mga kasama natin dito, they would also like to raise questions and I'm going to give you another 5 minutes so that they can answer, they can ask questions.
Pwede ba
and we also have a Congressman.
magdagdag lang ng punto?
But he has to finish. I'm sorry, Congressman. Congressman Marcoleta.
Thank you,
has to
Mr.
finish.
Chair. Kaya ko lang po tinanong yun dahil nga dun sa universal charge. Ang PISAM po kasi meron siyang obligation na ibenta niya po yung remaining assets po ng NPC. Ang nangyari naman po, ang NPC, hindi lang siya nagbebenta pero nag-ooperate po ng mga iba pang assets natin na generation doon sa mga tinatawag na SPAG areas. Ang problema po, katulad ng binanggit kanina ni Madam ERC, doon po sa Mindoro Occidental, hindi naman, kung hindi kumikita ang NPC, palagi na lamang niyang kinukuha yung pambayad doon sa kung sino man yung supplier doon sa universal charge. Napakalaki po ng universal charge. Bakit po ganun na hindi yung ba na-manage? Hindi ba dapat ibenta po ninyo yung hindi na nagagamit na mga facility ninyo para sa ganun yung universal charge munti naman kasi po ito pabigat din sa mga consumers So we have to rationalize this, Mr. Chair, dahil ang pinag-uusapan po natin yung affordability of rates Ang sabi po kasi ng Korte Suprema, Mr. Chair, ito po, talagang nakasulat to Jurisprudence na po ito GR numbers 141314 at saka 141369. Ang sabi po, babasahin ko na para magkaintindihan tayo. To charge consumers for expenses incurred by a public utility which are not related to the service or benefit derived by the consumers from the public utility is unjustified and inequitable. Ang question pa nga doon, sabi niya, should public interest prevail over private profits? Ito po, meron pa siyang sinabi. Rate regulation is an art reaching a result that is good for the public utility, but is best to the public. So makikita po natin dito, Mr. ang balancing talaga. We are always for the affordability kasi nandun po yun sa batas. Yun po gusto ko doon ako magtapos, Mr. Chair. Salamat po.
Okay, thank you, Congressman Marcoleta. And now let's move on and let's go to Congressman Albert Garcia. Congressman, the floor is yours for your questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions for our resource persons. And very quickly, first of all, to the DOE, if I understand correctly your brief presentation a while ago, maganda ho yung outlook natin at wala masyado magiging problema. Did I understand correctly?
Better than last year, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary. And is that for the end of the year or even beyond?
4 and 25, the projections.
Okay, so maganda tayo nun.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, we've been experiencing the decrease in power rates since from last year na umabot po ng 20 pesos and even beyond per kilowatt hour. Ngayon, nasa 11, 10, 9 pesos na lang po. Are we expecting a slow drop of power rates in the coming months, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, please answer, Attorney De Balanta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's our expectation for the next few months. As we know, over the summer months, there is always a trend towards higher rates because of the increased demand. And now what we see over the last few months, also because the global prices for coal has really been softening, the prices in WESM are also declining. So that's what we see. Although what we see in the generation rates being passed on, it's not decreasing at the pace commensurate to the pace at which coal prices are decreasing. So that's part of our, I mentioned earlier, the analysis we are conducting in the commission.
Okay, so dapat mas mababa pa yung ibababa. So we would expect the trend to continue in the coming months.
Okay, makasingit lang po ako. So, bumababa po yung presyo ng coal, tama? So, kung bumababa
Yes,
po yung
sir.
presyo ng coal, dapat bumababa yung rate natin kuryente.
Tama po. That's
what's
the
happening right now.
expectation. Opo. But hindi po sila 1:1. When we saw last year, with the steep increases in coal prices globally, halos sumunod po sila, magkakabit yung increase. Pero ngayong mabilis na din yung pagbaba ng coal prices, bumababa, pero mas mabagal yung generation rate. So inaaral po namin na bakit nagpapabagal. Pwede pong dahil sa exchange rate. Kasi po imported nga po yung coal. So it could be because our exchange rate is not as favorable. Baka po isang factor yon. But we need study further po.
Okay. Isa na lang po kung I understand yung major supplier natin ng coal, importation natin ng coal is from Indonesia. Ang kinakatakutan ko lang, baka magkaroon ng problema sa Indonesia, just like what happened to Russia and Ukraine. Paano kung nagka-problema sa Indonesia? So, meron ba tayong other alternative countries na pwede natin pagkunan ng coal in case nagka-problema sa region na yon?
Thank you, Chair. That's precisely why we want to diversify the sources of power and energy in the country, because we cannot remain over-dependent on just one single source. But the last time that Indonesia imposed a moratorium, that's why we lowered the tariff on imported coal from other sources. So including, it would have included Russia as far away as South Africa, and even US sources, but mainly and Australia is already zero tariff. So those are our alternatives.
Thank you, Secretary Tia. You may continue now, Congressman Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May we have a copy, Chair Dimalanta, with regards to your study kung bakit mas mabagal bumaba yung presyo sa generation charge?
Certainly po,
Para
sir.
pag-aralan din po namin ang JCEC. Moving to my next question, nabanggit kanina ni Chair Velasco about the right-of-way problems, yung hindi makalabas yung power sa Bataan. We're host to several power sources, as you know. Na-announce po ni Presidente sa kanyang SONA na sisimula na po yung Bataan-Cavite Interlink Bridge connecting Bataan to Cavite, Region 3 and Region 4. And alam ko sa design may utilities section, and aside from cargo trucks, cars that will traverse the bridge once it's done, syempre pwede rin po doon ang utilities like internet, water, and probably power. And wala pong right-of-way issue masyado ito dahil dadaan sa dagat, connecting to a main big market for power, which is the Calabarzon area. So have we coordinated with the proponents to discuss possibility of the grid traversing that route, and para magkaroon ng redundancy yung ating grid, and also have a direct connection to a major market?
Thank you, Chairs. I think the question is very important, and that's why we have started discussions with Secretary Bonoan, not only for the Manila Bay Bridge, but for all other bridges in the country. And the other missed opportunities, like, for example, what is this? The metro, the subway, because that's an opportunity again to have and even to lay down the distribution lines along the subway. And then the other is really with the tollways in the country. So unfortunately we haven't done this in the past, and therefore these have really been missed opportunities. But going forward, we would like to be able to take advantage of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Please keep us posted on the developments with this coordination. Next question, Mr. Chair. Recently, our chairman, Chair Rafi Tulfo and Chair Lord Velasco, went to Bataan with the good secretary about 5 months ago, 6 months ago, to inaugurate the first grid scale battery. So first ever in the country. And so this is a big development, especially sa renewable, and in maintaining the ancillary services of the grid. No? May we know the updates? Because the last time I checked, parang naghihintay yata sila ng license for them to operate, I think with DRC. So may we know the developments? Kasi very crucial po ito, especially we're moving into renewables itong mga darating na panahon.
Thank you very much for the question, Honorable Garcia. On the part of the DOE, we have already made the necessary endorsement of all these battery projects or energy storage projects. So I believe the proponents have also participated in the competitive selection process of NGCP for ancillary services. So yun na lang po siguro yung final process before they can start operation. Thank you.
Okay, may we hear from the ERC, Mr. Chair?
Opo.
Go ahead, yes, you may answer.
Thank you po. Maybe we can clarify. There are two permits. Maybe they're referring to the certificate of compliance, which is like the permit to operate. That has already been issued, and that enabled them to participate in the competitive selection process undertaken by NGCP for the ancillary services. And for that, they were awarded a contract to provide ancillary services, and for which we have already issued also just last week the provisional authority for them to provide those services.
Okay, so malaking tulong po ito for the grid and for our energy stability. Ano po? Marami pa po bang proponents that would want to come in sa battery?
Marami po. Yes. Ikaw na.
If I may po, Mr. Chairs and Honorable Garcia, the Department of Energy have actually issued a guidelines on energy storage system. So we do not focus mainly on the battery energy storage system, but also to include other technologies. So kasama po dyan yung pump storage hydros at other mechanical devices that can be used as energy storage system. So nandiyan po yung compressed air at even po yung flywheel concept, which some of our companies have already tested. No, nagkaroon na sila ng demonstration on how efficient is at meron na rin pong mga technology providers in the country. Though hindi pa po full yung deployment. Unlike battery, which is been an accepted technology in the industry. Thank you.
So marami nag-a-apply because in the US there's really a boom pagdating sa storage and battery. I think 32% per quarter ang boom nila. So dito I would expect the same technologies and proponents to come in to provide stability and cheaper power sa ating consumers. Moving to the next question very quickly, Mr. Chair. Sa NEA po, nabanggit kanina ng ating administrator na yung i-connect natin ang mga residents. So imbis na nag-target tayo ng sitio, diretso na sa mga residents as mandated by our president na matapos itong lahat, makonect lahat sa magkaroon ng kuryente by 2028. And from my experience as a local government official, this is a moving target. Hindi lamang po geographically, pati yung mga residents dahil they migrate from one area to another kung saan mas maraming trabaho, and we've experienced this in Bataan dahil marami pong economic zones, maraming trabaho, so marami nagmamigrate. So this is very challenging, no? So how can the NEA really pinpoint and follow, meet the target at the same time, meet the challenges of this parang sort of moving target?
Mr. Chair, we formulated a 5-year plan, basing it on the PSA census of 2020, and we came up with figures. However, these are raw data. These are raw data, and now we are coming up with the terms of reference in coordination with the Philippine Space Agency that we will do a satellite imaging of the whole country, identify the different households or the total households in the country. Yun po ang pambabangga namin sa raw data. Now, with regards to clustered households and gridable in the sense that it can be covered by the expanded distribution line, we will energize it through the sitio electrification program that is already in place. Now, the next question is, how about on the dispersed households that are far away from the grid and which will be unviable for us to still expand it? We resorted to what we call the solar home system, wherein it is solar with battery that would be able to supply 24 hours still of electricity with a maximum output of 60 watts that would cover 5 bulbs, a TV, electric fan, and a cell phone charger. And this is already happening we have already a proof of concept to this because this solar home system is already in place in about 40,000 households right now as we speak in the areas of South Cotabato and Davao del Sur, which happened way back 2016 by virtue of a EU grant. EU grant. So yun po ang aming strategy. Yun po ang aming strategy after we validate our raw data with the satellite imaging, and this will be there are three modes: the expansion of gridable lines, solar home systems, and for those clustered households still on a missionary area or the SPAG, then we will open it for the implementation of the microgrid program of the DOE. We will open it and offer it to the private sector.
Napakaganda po ng programa yung solar home system. Sino pong qualified doon? Paano kayo gumagawa ng evaluation para maging qualified ang isang may-ari ng household?
Well, Mr. Chair, actually, kapag hindi kayang abutin ng distribution line, immediately we have to provide a solar home system. Now, the next question here is, what is the sustainability program? As it is right now, the sustainability program, pag na-implement natin itong solar home system, iti-turn over ho namin sa kooperatiba ito, the operation and maintenance. And the household will use prepaid.
Sa installation ng structure, sabi mo kasi grant from Europe, so libre yun.
That happened in 2016. Yun po ang proof of concept namin.
Okay.
But on the budgeting purposes, in-include ho namin yon sa aming budgetary schedules. So yun po ang next question po is the sustainability issue. Iti-turn over ho namin sa kooperatiba yan. At yung kooperatiba naman ho ang mag-operate and maintain ng solar home system which has a battery. At yung mga household naman po, they can do it prepaid. ERC already approved of the rates of the solar home system, which is charging 27.40 a day. About 220 that can light 5 bulbs, electric fan, and a cell phone charger.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So is this parang paid upfront by NEA, by the electric co-op?
That will be, programa po namin, it will come as a subsidy of the national government.
As a subsidy.
Subsidy po ito.
Magkano po per home? Magkano po per home?
Actually, ang latest market research is cost 30,000 pesos per household system. Solar household system. But the latest account po, that's the cap, the price index. But I think the latest procurement happened sometime 3 years ago. It's about 28,000. So we are now doing a market research. We are doing now a market research on what are the available technologies that are affordable to sustain this program.
Okay, you have two more questions. Go ahead, and then after you, then we go to Congressman Arnie Fuentabella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that answer, Mr. Administrator. And follow up, may coordination ba kayo ng DSUD? Dahil a lot of our consumers, lalo na yung mga informal settlers na nakonekta na rin sa kuryente, ay of course, hopefully, ma-relocate sa mas magandang mga pabahay dito po sa 4PH na programa rin ho ng ating Pangulo. And in fact, the target is 1 million homes a year. So maganda nga ako para mas maging maayos yung kanilang tahanan. Maganda may coordination din tayo para yung mga programa natin sa kuryente na talagang pro-poor ay masundan hanggang sa paglipat nila sa mga magagandang tahanan at hopefully makatulong, makaangat sa kanila into the middle class level.
If I may respond, Mr. Chair, it just happened last Friday. Our guest of honor on our Renee anniversary and the last day was Secretary Acusar, because I entered into a memorandum of agreement with him because the NEA and me as the administrator is propagating and planning to extend housing programs for our linemen. So we both signed a memorandum agreement during the affair, and we already shared the coordination because he already announced to me that he needs the support of the electric cooperatives on those sites of his housing projects.
And last question?
Last two, Mr. Chair.
Last two.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that meron ng coordination. Last two questions po. Going back to DOE. I'm not a technical expert, Mr. Chair. Pero ang pagkalam ko, nung ginawa po yung EPIRA, yung technology at that time was that in-unbundle natin yung mga power sectors, generation, transmission, distribution, and consumers, because that was the model at that time. Pero ngayon, may mga bagong model na nag-emerge, and because of climate change, yung dating concept natin of transmission na talagang mahahabang transmission lines, malalayo, that are susceptible to climate change and power disruption, ay tinitignan na muli dahil maaring hindi na ito yung pinaka-efficient. So ngayon, nauuso na po yung mga microgrids, smart microgrids. Are we looking at this newer, more efficient, more stable model for our country? Nagsisimula na po ba tayo dito? And may we know the details if ever? Thank you.
Yes, please. Start first with DOE, with ASEC Maria, then ERC.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Honorable Garcia. Yes, the Department of Energy has already embarked on conducting studies on how to provide efficient services in terms of transmission. We're currently formulating what we term as smart and green grid system. Ang isa pa rin po kung role namin dito is we understand that some of our renewable energy resource development may not take long in terms of development. Mas mabilis na po, unlike before. But it takes also time in constructing and establishing yung ating mga transmission system. So yung smart and green grid system natin will address that timing, the right timing. We have to make sure that the lines are smart enough to cater for the needs. At isasamahan po natin yan ng yung ating artificial metering infrastructure, advanced metering infrastructure, so that yun nga pong flexibility ng grids natin will be there to ensure reliability. So nandun po yung availability, reliability, and efficiency. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Chair. And kung pwede po, ma-update din tayo from time to time sa JCEC because these are very interesting developments, Mr. Chair. And for my last question, Mr. Chair, we hear a lot about solar and wind sa mga renewable. Pero isa pang emerging renewable and very predictable is yung tidal energy. Have we started looking at tidal energy dito sa Pilipinas?
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Honorable Garcia. We're not only looking at tidal energy. We are actually studying all ocean energy potentials. Yung pong tidal energy is just one. In fact, yung very first natin project was
That's the same thing as the ocean wave energy, right?
Yes po.
Okay.
Ang iba pa po yung ocean wave sa tidal. Tidal po kasi is yung high tide and low tide.
Okay.
So you capture the water during high tide. You, magkaroon ka ng harang, then allow it passage on a turbine. Then yun po yung parang hydro yan na storage. Yun pong wave, yun po yung modulation. Yung difference po niya kung masyadong mataas 1 meter, it can, the oscillation can produce energy. Meron pa rin po tayong turbidity.
Offshore wind.
Ano po? Turbidity po ng marine current. Pwede rin po lagyan ng turbina yun. And yung pong isang unang technology nga na natin is the ocean thermal energy resources. In other countries po kasi, yung difference ng surface temperature at saka yung deep temperature, umaabot ng more than 20 degrees. At kung gagamitan po natin yan ng yung tinatawag po natin na thermal fluids, yung madaling mag-boil, nasa 18 to 20 degrees lang magbo-boil yung water, then that differential temperature can produce energy. Lahat naman po yan pinag-aaralan natin. And in fact, we have a few, of course, very few developers that have already secured service contract to conduct the study regarding these ocean energy resources. Thank you po.
Likewise, Mr. Chair, may I request that we be updated with these very exciting forms of clean energy in the future. And finally, Mr. Chair, it's not a question, gusto ko lang po sabihin na in the Freeport area of Bataan, ang presyo ng kuryente po namin for industrial is 6 pesos per kilowatt hour without any subsidy. So I just wanted, it can be done. Pwede po mangyari yan with the right setup, especially yung binabanggit ng mga microgrid smart setup. So pwede po mangyari ito sooner than later for our economy and job creation to really flourish. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Congressman Albert Garcia. Now let's go to Congressman Arnie Fontabella. Congressman Fontabella, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Rafi Tulfo and Chairman Lord Velasco, my colleagues. Chair, konting question lang kasi ayoko nang gano'n sa DOE family. Actually, namimiss ko na po sila. Kasama ko sila. Doon araw po kahapon. Hanggang alas 12 lang naman po kami. And I'm sorry for being late because I had to do the budget briefing for the Civil Service Commission. Okay. To EIC lang, ma'am, just one question. Regarding the resolution na hindi po sa JCEC, what is the reason behind it?
Mr. Chair, it was really prompted by two things. One, we have backlogs on the issuance of certificates of compliance, and we have resorted to issuing merely provisional authorities to operate. COCs or certificates of compliance should have a lifetime of 5 years. So hindi po sana bumabalik yung mga GENCOs para mag-renew kasi yung provisional po 1 year lang po yon. So natatambak din po yung trabaho sa komisyon kasi imbis na every 5 years lang bumabalik yung GENCO, every year siya bumabalik kasi puro provisional. Eh, hindi po namin siya magawang yung full certificate of compliance because they cannot comply with the public offer requirement. So that's the first. The second po is equity and fairness because we really think the public listing requirement is an unreasonable requirement for small, particularly for small renewable energy developers.
Are we talking about REs only?
REs po and those that are single asset owners, for example, because those that are part of conglomerates of large companies, they can, of course, their parents are listed or they can list on their own. But if you have investors that are just they operate just one unit of a genset, for example, they provide to a SPUG area, then they are expected under the current rules to still list even if they're just operating that small
So
genset.
how many
SPUG area.
permits are we talking about
Permits po,
na pinoprocess nyo po? Just for this one.
I can provide the list of permits, but for example, 51% of our generation companies have failed to comply with this requirement. So half of that, I think we currently have 200, almost 300 GENCOs. Half of them are not able to comply.
So what do you do, ma'am? Laging
Puro
provisional.
provisional lang po.
So every year?
Yes, Your Honor. And if we anticipate more RE companies to come in because the DOE, as we know, has conducted the auction. And the green energy auction results in smaller companies getting awards for that supply contract. And there will be thousands of them coming in if all the plans for renewable will be realized. So they'll all be renewing on an annual basis because they will not be able to compete.
Is it safe to say, ma'am, na pag trinat po ng GCEC to, yung mga daily backlogs nyo is mababawasan?
Definitely, Your Honor. Plus, we're also reviewing our own processes para po din hindi talaga mag-build up yung ganitong permit backlog.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Are you done with your questions?
Not yet,
Congressman, are you, okay, go ahead.
Sa NGCP lang. No, just point of clarification first, Mr. Chair, no? Yung sinabi po ni Congressman Marcoleta, my dad, my father was against the VAT of energy. Okay. And even the late Ted Garcia. Okay. Just to clarify. And actually, yun yung point niya because talagang minsan sisisihin po yung ipula sa pagtaas ng presyo because of VAT. So malaking factor po yun. And just for the information of the body, I've been talking with ERC because dun po sa bill nyo, sa template nyo, yung systems loss and transmission loss is naka-VAT pa, pinapasa pa rin natin sa mga tao. So, is there any status doon sa pinag-usapan po natin about fixing your template na tanggalin na yung systems loss and transmission loss, ipapasa natin na hindi na vatable?
Thank you, Your Honor. We're reviewing the bill format. Actually, our review is almost done, but we need to coordinate this also with BIR because it's the interpretation of the term gross receipts that we need to be reconciled with their view that they will not consider it also as part of gross receipts. Otherwise, there will be at the very least confusion on what is the basis for the VAT. But we'll update the.
Yeah, but did you write a letter to BIR regarding this matter?
Not yet po on this, but we've written them on other
Kasi
items.
malaking bagay po ito, no? Lalo na kung mababawas po natin. And hindi po sa makatarungan, lalo na po sa ating mga consumers na binabayaran pa yung systems loss, no?
Pati po subsidies.
Pati po subsidies, yes.
VAT.
So, sana po gawin po natin yun. And sa NGCP, ma'am, sa NGCP, how many delayed transmission projects do you have? ERC, may record po ba kayo?
By our count po, 68.
68? NGCP, sa count po ng ERC na 68 delayed projects nyo, ano na po yung status ito?
Your Honor, from what I know po, about 30 plus projects have been completed already.
Okay, so 68 minus 30 and 38 more?
Plus 7. 38.
Around
Can you
38.
confirm this, ERC?
Maybe we should just reconcile our list with them.
Yes, kindly reconcile and submit it to the committee. Okay. So I've been asking this kasi marami na po talaga yung delays na nangyayari po sa NGCP. Actually, even po sa mababang kapulungan, pinag-uusapan na po yung pag-review ng franchise. Because there are two conflicting laws. Actually, in the IPIRA law, ang hindi po talaga pwede i-privatize is the transmission. Okay? And but because of the franchise law, nag-grant po sa NGCP yun. And maybe during that time, kulang po yung puhunan ng ating pong gobyerno, kaya po pinapasok natin ang pribado na para gawin po ito. But you have to show us that you have connected the Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. This is very crucial to the Filipino people, especially for the development ng ating pong bansa. Now we have renewables, REs. So I'm asking NGCP, may plano na po ba kayo? Marami pong plano na ang DOE. Are you aligned sa mga renewables natin na makonect po sa grid?
Your Honor, for the renewable projects that were considered in the TDP, they're underway. But for those recently flagged concepts on other renewable sources, they're yet to be included po in the plans and programs of NGCP.
Yes, kasi nakita mo na po natin, even we are reviewing na yung sa pag-grant sa inyo ng franchise. Actually, find it a sweetheart deal. Even yung franchise tax nyo, consumer pa rin ang nagbabayad. But since grant sa inyo ng gobyerno yun, expecting a lot from you also. Okay? Even ang ating mga spag areas. Because ang problema ng spag areas natin, kung may submarine cable tayo, connected to a grid, wala na rin pong problema yung nangyayari po sa Napocor. And there are other solutions also. Because we have spag areas also, may hybrid po kami. Pero if it's feasible po talaga lalo sa malaking area na magkaroon ng submarine cable, and ang aming pong chairman, si Kong Lord, matagal na po yan, sa lugar po nila. So very critical po kayo. I'm just warning you na marami pa po tayong mga hearings sa nangyayari. We will look into this because very vital and crucial po kayo lalo na sa larangan ng enerhiya sa ating bansa. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Fontebella. I just want to add, kanina kasi I've heard na 60-something delay projects. Ilan po? 68. And ilan ang natitira? 30 NGCP.
We have to reconcile, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I know, but maybe doon sa natitira na lang na delay projects down to 30 plus. When is it going to be accomplished? When is it going to be finished?
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, you are recognized. And your name again is?
Cynthia Alabanza po of NGCP.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you po. For the ones that have been issued show cause order by the ERC, I think there were around 30 something. 7 of those have already been completed. The rest are in various stages of completion. Meron pa pong mga, if I'm not mistaken, a few more that are in the 68 but have not been issued a show cause order. Of the total 68 by our count, it's around 31 na po yung completed, and many of them again are in the various stages of completion. Very few po yung mga baka kailangan ibalik to the drawing board, including the there is a link
So how many more are not completed yet and are to be completed and yet to be completed? Can you give us a timeline kung kailan ma-accomplish yun?
We can give the details, Mr. Chair.
Ano ba tayong target date?
Again, maybe it's a good idea, as Chairman Mona mentioned, that we should reconcile our numbers and our data. But by our count,
I know. You should reconcile your numbers and data with the ERC. But my question is, kailan ba makukumpleto lahat yun? If you remember, dun sa solo ni Presidente, na-mention niya yun, yung connectivity, kailangan dapat before the end of his term, 2028, dapat completed, connected na yan.
Yes.
So marami na kayong delay, nabanggit nga yun ni Presidente. So kailan niyo po matatapos, ma-accomplish, mawawala na yung tinatawag na delay?
again, Mr. Chair, a lot of them are in almost completed. Dun sa na-issuehan ako ng
Almost. Kompleto lahat.
again, we will have to get back on the details because those are a lot of projects.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Sige po. Maraming salamat po. And now, let's move on. Go to Congressman Kuhanko. And I just want to remind Congressman Kuhanko, so we will still be having a series of meetings in the days and weeks and months to come. And of course, definitely you'll be one of the important member of this committee, and therefore to let you know if there are things that maybe they cannot answer your questions, satisfy your questions. There are still some days that wherein you can throw those questions to them. For now, I'll give you 5 more minutes so that we can wrap up. So to ask
5 minutes, Your Honor, maybe 10.
10 minutes. yes,
Everybody
go ahead.
had more than 5 minutes.
10 minutes. All right.
Yes.
Let's go. 10 minutes.
My first question is for NGCP. Could you report to the committee in a letter if you are to connect a solar project, what would be the charge per kilowatt hour for your transmission line? Maybe per kilometer. I don't know how you price your transmission. Versus if you were to connect to a conventional power source. So no, you don't have to answer now. You answer it later on. No, I'd like to make a comment on the frequency control ancillary services. This is a question for DOE. You don't have to answer right now. Will increasing the penetration of wind and solar increase the need for ancillary services? So if it does, because I understand that wind and solar are low inertia energy sources and therefore need some way to compensate for that, for frequency control. So if that is the case, is that not an additional cost over conventional power? Ang komento ko lang po dito, ay one more question on kay Madam Ruth U. Owen, ma'am. We had a recent, what you call that meeting?
APEC.
ASEAN Business Advisory Council Roundtable. It was hosted by Sabine Aboitis. I don't know in what capacity. It was, he gave a keynote address, and also our good secretary gave a keynote address in that affair. May I know, we had a poll in that roundtable whether people wanted nuclear or not. Could you give us your observation of what the result of the poll was?
Okay, so it was the APEC Business Advisory Council. It was Sabine Aboitis is the chair of ABAC. The poll was conducted for more than 100 attendees on nuclear. The subject is small modular reactor. So at the start, before we started the discussions, there was a poll to ask if the attendees are in favor or not on nuclear. And I think 90% said they're in favor.
Repeat that please for the record, 90%? 90?
I think so, yes, as
Yes.
far as I remember.
That is for the consumption of our good secretary. So that, I think you were there, Mr. Secretary, you saw that response. So I'd like to tie that with the survey done, SWS survey done by the previous DOE in the Duterte administration, which showed that 79% of respondents thought that nuclear power could help lower the price of electricity. So there is some general acceptance of nuclear power among consumers, Mr. Chairman. So let me go to say that just a moment. Let me go to say that I do not see the sense of urgency or imperative or the imperative to push the nuclear solution in the country by the DOE, specifically by our secretary. Kung usapan natin ngayong hapon, naging masalimuot sa aking tingin na tingin po ang savings na gusto natin squeeze sa presyo ng kuryente. Yun pong papel na binigay ko sa ating dalawang co-chair, yun po galing sa EIA, which is a US Government Information Agency. It is the average cost of the over 94 nuclear plants running in the United States today. Ang average cost po nila, including fuel, including regulation, including the waste disposition trust, including the decommissioning trust, is 20.2 US cents per kilowatt hour. Mr. Secretary, that is 1 peso and 30 centavos per kilowatt hour, which does not include, please take note, ERC, which does not include capital recovery. So, na ROI na po ang nuclear plant, napakamura na po ng kuryente. Sana po ma-internalize ng ating mga miyembro dito sa joint commission na ang laki po ng tipid sa pag-iwas ng pag-angkat ng coal or gas kapag nag-nuclear po tayo. Ano po ang diferensya? Sa bawat 1,000 megawatt, makakaiwas po tayo ng around at least $700 million a year in avoided fossil fuel importation. Ang nuclear po, mataas ang sweldo, malaki ang bayad sa tao, sa pagpatakbo, pero halos wala sa fuel. Kabaliktaran po ang fossil fuels. Lahat ng pera natin napupunta sa bansang nag-export ng fossil fuels, ngunit ang liit po ng sweldo sa tao. So ang dami pong benepisyo ng nuclear na hindi ko pong nababanggit ng ating DOE. Kaya po ay kagabi kinwestiyon ko na ito kay Secretary, bakit po hanggang ngayon halos 14 po ang nuclear vendor countries na hindi Amerika na hindi po nating pinapadala ng IGA, Intergovernmental Agreement. That is between the DOE of our country and the DOE of the other country. Ang dahilan na binanggit ng ating secretary is that sa DFA daw yon. Ang tanong ko po, kayo ba po ay nagsabi sa DFA na kailangan bilisan po nila yan? Sinabi niyo ba sa kanila na pag wala tayo niyan, hindi po tayo makapag-umpisa? Hindi po dumating dito ang mga representative ng vendor countries na yan para i-alok sa atin o magdiskusyon sa technical ng mga teknolohiyang ito. Meron po akong binigay na House Resolution urging the nuclear, the DOE to establish the Office of Nuclear Energy just like the American DOE. Ang nakalagay po sa resolution, dapat may USEC na exclusively for nuclear lang ang kanyang trabaho. Merong 10 plantilla positions. So yun po ang sense ng House na ipinaabot po sa inyo. Tanong ko po dahil budget season po ngayon. Magkano ba ang budgetary support na kailangan po ninyo para ma-fulfill po itong hinihingi ng resolution na ito? Banggitin ko rin yung 1, 2, 3 negotiations natin with USA. Bakit ba po hindi pwedeng ipaalam sa kung ayaw nyo po sa akin, dito po sa ating JCEC, yung takbo ng negosasyon tungkol po dyan. Dahil baka may concern po kami na later on na nagawa nyo na yung final draft, may komentaryo kami, babaguhin nyo na naman, madidelayed na naman po ito. So I do not see the point of withholding it from leaders of Congress. Ang KHNP po, Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power, and the Korean government went to your office and told you that they are willing to conduct a free feasibility study worth several million US dollars for free with no commitment on the part of the Philippine side. Bakit po hanggang ngayon, ilang buwan na po ang lumipas, ibinato niyo po sa DFA.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I think since you said you just needed 10 minutes, you've gone up to 25 minutes now.
Okay, so I will wind up po.
Okay,
I
thank you.
will wind up.
Thank you.
So, and I have a lot of points, but since the chairman, again, why have you indicated to DFA na urgent po ito? Kasi kailangan magdesisyon ang ating Kongreso or ang ating Presidente kung ano ba talaga ang gustong gawin sa ating PNPP. And ano po, na-interrupt po ako kaya nakalimutan ko yung sasabihin ko, Mr. Chairman. Ginulo mo ako. Sobrang tagal. Tagal nung iba ako. Alam niyo po, kagabi ako rin ang huli. Ngayon, ako na naman ang huli. Hindi yata patas po yan. Let me wind up, no? What was I saying? Yes, nami-miss po itong buong kwento nito, the elephant in the room. The obvious answer, lower electricity prices for the long term. Cleaner electricity, more reliable electricity that does not have side effects on the grid. Bakit po ganon? Dahil kulang po ang inyong liwanag. So, titin ko po yung PISAM, kagabi sinabi ko, gusto niyong ibenta ang Bagak, Nuclear Village at Caliraya Pump Storage na sinadya para sa nuclear plant. Hindi niyo po dapat ipaghiwa-hiwalay yan kasi kung hindi man desisyonan ng PNPP nitong administrasyon, dapat buong-buo po PNPP para sa susunod na administrasyon. Huwag niyo pong sabotahin dahil that is economic sabotage, Mr. Chairman. So yun po ang aking pahayag. Binigay ko po kagabi, narinig ko po ang PISAM, baka po kayo makasuhan ng economic sabotage kapag nagwasak-wasak niyo po yan. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, there will be series of meeting in the coming days, and the schedules will be discussed by the members of this committee. So for now, on behalf of the Senate panel, this joint hearing is hereby adjourned.
On behalf of the House panel, I'd like to thank the members, the Chair Tulfo, and our resource persons for giving us time and sharing with us the energy outlook and also plans and solutions to be made by our energy family. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po sa pagpunta lahat. Magandang gabi po.
Salamat.